Pop, lock it, drop it. Pop, lock it, drop it. Lock it, drop it. Pop, 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 lock it, drop it.
Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. Sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, Sabrinasalvati.
All right. Can you guys see me first and foremost? Because I can't see myself. So let me just double check something here just to make sure I have that right date and time set. I believe I did. Let's see. We see it is not showing. Can you guys see me? Can anybody see me or hear me? Oh boy. I don't either. I don't know what to do.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's happening. Let me see if it's on Rockfin.
Let's see. It's like I see people in the chat, but I don't see.
All right, so we're on Rockfin, but we're not on YouTube.
Okay, let me double check something. I don't know what's going on here.
Let's see.
Oh, I see it now.
Right. We just came up. All right, carry on.
Okay, so you guys can see me, yes? Can I get a yes in the chat? Okay, YouTube took a second. I don't know why. For some reason, Rockfin started before YouTube did, and that never happens. But anyway, welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays and Fridays. And you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. Okay. Welcome back, guys. I hope you had a great weekend. I got a lot of cool stories, I think, to discuss tonight. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, and Twitter and Rumble. Welcome. Okay, let's go ahead and go to some of the comments here in the chat. Tonight should be pretty interesting. We have some interesting stories. Shout out to Miguel, says peace. What's going on? Lawrence says God save the Queen. Shout out to Hannah G, says Barack Obama. What's going on? Bryce says here for another Sabby banger. Don't forget to hit the like button on your way in. That's right. That helps me out with the algorithm. What's going on? Ilhanner says hello to Miguel. Shout out to Mazarn, says Obama should have drank the water in Flint. Oh, wait. ... Shout out to Lawrence, who's a Sabby member, says hi to Ilhanner. What's going on? CBC Voter says happy Tuesday, Sabby Sabs. Shout out to Gamer, says hello. What's going on? Notori says, hey, family, love y'all. What's up, Notori? Shout out to Larez, says, sup, Sabrina, Eric, and Sabby fam. Help Sab out by watching the ads, just the first 5 seconds. Pod Save Us is Democratic shill trash. LOL. Obama was always awful. Too many people just don't know. Ooh. Shout out to Silver Surfer, says Sabby. Peace. Someone get this woman her Taco Tuesday. Actually made spaghetti and meatballs tonight with wheat pasta. No, not wheat. Whole grain pasta. Yes, whole grain pasta. A little bit more flavorful, actually. What's going on? Whoever says, what's up, comrades? Can't believe I've actually been on time for 2 shows today. What's going on? Deborah says, good evening. Shout out to Dr. Nick says, hi, everybody. Shout out to Eric T. Red, who's a Sabby member, says, hey, all, here we go. What's going on? I think I skipped over someone really quick here. What's going on? Rick says, hey, y'all. Shout out to, I think I skipped over everybody. Here we go. Shout out to Please Understand says, we live now. That's right. Shout out to Colin says, we see you, Sabby. Thank you so much. Yeah, there was a delay with YouTube. Shout out to Topsy Turvy says, hi. Interesting name. Greetings, Red 6 says, YouTube is good. All right. All right. Great. Okay. Just making sure my static's okay here. Yeah, we'll go ahead and share and then we'll close that up. All righty, let's go ahead and give a big shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Want to go ahead and share their names here. Thank you guys so much for your support. I really do appreciate it. It helps me go a long way over here. I think I froze a little bit on YouTube, but here we go. That's my Wi-Fi, sorry. Thank you to everyone who's a Sabby patron. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: Ultimate, Sabinators, Sabsters, don't forget about those Sabbies, and of course, members. Thank you guys for your support. And I do want to give a special shout out to a new Sabby patron. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it up for Nicole Salk. Welcome. All right, cool. Yeah, it wasn't YouTube. It was my Wi-Fi, but it seems to be fine now. Okay, what are we talking about tonight, ladies? Let's go ahead and share that beautiful thumbnail. I don't know why I said ladies, but everyone. Tonight, we are discussing Russell Brand exposes Barack Obama. Yikes. Barack Obama is not going to have a good night tonight because I have some things to say. We're going to talk about what Russell Brand actually brought to my attention, something I forgot about. We're going to touch on that. And we're also going to touch on that interview that Barack Obama had recently on CNN. So we're going to get into that as well. We're also going to discuss tonight Macron. President Macron sends a message. And why is Xi Jinping there behind him? Should the U.S. government be concerned in reference to the message that he is spouting right now? We're also going to discuss Ice Cube. He does not look happy in that picture. I think you'll understand why later on. But Ice Cube has a message also. He has an alert that he is sending out. And we're also going to discuss Pod Save America. Shame. God. Boy, okay. Everyone is coming out tonight. Everyone is coming out to try to convince you that third party is going to be a bad idea. We got a lot to say about that tonight, so I can't wait to get into that. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in. Eric, I think I may have to reconnect at some point. It looks like it's fine now, but it's kind of going in and out. It says connection is fairly good. So can you hop on for just a second and I will come out and go back in? Just a second. I just got to reboot. I want to reboot the Wi-Fi. Thanks.
All right.
Guys, give me like 3 minutes.
All right, here we go. A quick early dose of Eric T. Red. Yeah, I'll take up a little space here until Sabby comes back. Let's see. I think that's why we had trouble at first getting on the Wi-Fi. Well, you can see me now. You won't see me before calling because we're not doing calling tonight. I don't think. I think we'll be doing. Does it tell me a story? It's the other mistake is looking at the chat, right? I think we'll probably do calling on Thursday. And let's see. I have to look at like my notes, just think about things to to talk about? Let's see. Well, I mean, one thing I'll say is I'm waiting for. I'd like to see more happening with the Cornel West campaign. I know it's early and they're just getting started, and it's early in these campaigns. But I don't know, but I'm sure a bunch of you agree that we're ready for the call, like to have some kind of thing to say, let's do this. Or I mean, Cornel West could have a rally, in Boston or any of these cities tomorrow, and you'd get 1,000 plus of us to show up like nothing, and I don't know. You can tell me in the chat if you agree with me too. Like, is it already time to start doing Cornel West 24 rallies? Because I don't know, maybe we're just anxious and for something to do. Let's see, we got Kelly's, Ross, and Eric the Viking. There you go. Sorry, gamer, no call in tonight. And yeah, boy, I hope if Sabby's equipment doesn't work, we're gonna have a long Eric T Red show. But yeah, oh, I see her coming back in. We're back. How's it?
All right, I had to.
Pretty good. I can stop talking now. Goodbye.
Cool. Yeah, sorry guys, I had to reset my router there for just a second, but we are back. Let's go ahead and get started. So I actually want to start with this first story about President Macron. Now, he has been pretty vocal recently. I don't know if you guys have seen, but President Macron has been speaking about a global agenda. Now, this is interesting considering I would say President Macron may need to want to fix things in his own country first. Remember, there were people there protesting by the millions because he decided to implement that pension reform. So he doesn't seem to be okay with his own country and controlling things there. But when it comes to this global agenda that he's discussing about, and he has been on the world stage about this in the past couple of months, he has a lot to say. And one of the things that President Macron has decided to say is that the U.S. government and China are going to have to cooperate in order for us to have a global agenda. Now, am I here to say I disagree with that? No, I am not. But I am here to say it's interesting that he's trying to tell people what they need to do to make things right, but he doesn't seem to have that advice for himself in reference to his own citizens and in France. Listen to this interview that he had with CNN recently.
France and Washington have a special relationship. After all, France was the first military ally of the yet-to-be-formed United States during the Revolutionary War. But will that relationship hold, or will France and its neighbors find another path? After a 3-day visit to China in April, President Macron told reporters that Europe needed what he called strategic autonomy. He didn't want the continent to be a vassal or follower of either China or America. Here's more of my interview with the French president.
Before that comes in, I just want to jump in and say something really quick. That's another thing I forgot to mention. Just remember that it was just like a month or two ago that President Macron said that Europe should probably become its own third world power and not get caught up between this rift in reference to the U.S. government and China.
Let's talk about China. You had a very important trip to China, and after you came back, you said some things that provoked a certain amount of opposition in Europe and particularly the United States. Most specifically, your comment on Taiwan. So I want to ask you, you said that Europe needs strategic autonomy. It should not be a vassal of either China or the U.S. And on Taiwan, we should be careful not to accelerate a crisis that is not ours. Mike Gallagher, the head of the China Committee in the House of Representatives, said these comments are disgraceful. Is there anything you want to clarify or change about what you said?
Look, I was very clear and I want to be clear. First, on Taiwan, we are in favor of the status quo, which means we are dead against any aggression and we do respect the existing model.
Okay, so I'm assuming what he means here when he says that we accept the existing model is that the one China policy, right? But at the same time, notice that he's talking out both sides of his mouth because he said that we don't want any form of aggression. So that also means that he does not want China, obviously, to intervene here, preventing Taiwan from getting some type of independence. So I hear him talking out both sides of his mouth, and that should concern you. The other thing that should concern you is notice that he said we are on board with the status quo. So what that means is that Macron is not like some progressive champion here. Yes, he's made the statement that the U.S. needs to learn how to work or cooperate with China. They need to work together. But that doesn't mean that he's like this progressive leader being brave and coming forward. He still agrees with the status quo. You have to remember where President Macron came from. Remember, he was a financier. So he comes from that business. He comes from the banking industry.
And this is what I reiterated with President Xi Jinping, and I understand this is exactly the position of President Biden. Second, I never put France in sort of equal distance vis-à-vis China and the US. We are ally in NATO, but through our history with the US, we do share the same values. We are economic competitors, but we are closely linked by history, by the alliance, and human relations and friendship. We want to have the best possible relation with China. We want and we have to work with China to fix climate change, biodiversity crisis, and a lot of conflicts in this world.
Let's hold right there for just a second. He said that he wants to have a working, like some type of working relationship with China. And he mentioned the climate crisis. Now, this is the part that's key because I'm going to show you another clip after this where he specifically addresses the climate issue. Globally, when we talk about combating climate change, that has to be a global effort. We cannot have a global effort if other countries don't want to work with other countries. You're going to have to collaborate here. So that's one of those examples that he is giving, that when it comes to that particular situation, you're going to have to cooperate, or the US and China are going to have to find a way to work together. So just keep that in mind. I think that's a great example that he gave. But how far is Macron willing to go?
It's clear that we don't share all the same, all the same values, and we have very structural differences on human rights and so on. But we want to find the right way to respect each other.
He said they have very differences on human rights. What are the differences that they have on human rights? Okay, so millions of people were marching through the streets in France, begging you not to increase the retirement age, not to adjust their pension reform. Where does he actually really stand when it comes to human rights? And does that include workers' rights? Something to think about.
And we are competitor, and our willingness is to anchor China in the global order. This is exactly what we are doing here in this conference. So this is just to clarify the sort of perception that China and US could be put at the same level vis-à-vis France, which is not the case. But I want to insist on a point. For me, it's very important to have a much more autonomous Europe and European Union. Why? Because it's useful for the global order. I think it's useful even for the US. It's useful to have a more powerful Europe being in capacity to fix conflicts at its border. I think we are very lucky to have a US administration ready to engage in Ukraine today. Will it be the case in a few years or in a few decades? I'm not sure. The Europeans have to build themselves their capacity to preserve peace on their territory and in their neighborhood.
So let's talk about this for a second. What he's telling you is that there may come a time when the US government may not be willing to aid European countries that, quote unquote, say that they need it, like a country like Ukraine. That's happening right now, but Macron is trying to signal to you that a couple of years from now, or maybe 10, 20 years from now, that may not be the case. Things may change. And so if that is the case, that things could change, That is why he is saying that Europe should stick together and become a third world power, that they have to look out for each other and not always rely on the fact that the US government is going to be their ally in the future. This is huge news I think people need to pay attention to, because it almost sounds like he foresees some type of significant change coming around the bank in reference to US politics.
Second, I want us, for our citizens, to be in a situation to be independent in terms of technology, defense, energy. I would say the key structures of a normal life. Why? Because nobody knows what could happen in the rest of the world. And if you are
Nobody knows what could happen in the rest of the world. Let me wind this back just a little bit. This is very telling, you guys.
I would say the key structures of a normal life. Why? Because nobody knows what could happen in the rest of the world. And if you are dependent on one country, you can be put in a very tricky situation the day you have a leadership in this country which decide to completely flip-flop. And it did happen. Guess what?
So there you go. He's telling you that Europe cannot continue just to depend on the United States. Does that sound familiar to you? Now, it may not be as extreme as what countries that are a part of BRICS are expressing right now, but it does sound a little bit similar to where even someone like Macron is starting to realize, can we depend on the US government forever? Or should we depend on each other? And if that is the case, if other European countries start to feel the same way that Macron is feeling, could it be possible that in the near future, sometime in our lifetime, we may see European countries form their own alliance similar to BRICS? Something to think about.
So I don't want to be put in such a situation again. So I think it's fair as a European to be very pushy for more autonomy. It's useful for the US from a defense point of view because this is burden sharing, and it's useful for the global order because it's having for the US an ally, being in a situation to discuss with some other people and big powers with which it's more difficult for the US. So I think it's not a lack of respect or disgraceful vis-a-vis the United States, what I said. And by the way, I discussed with President Biden before and after my trip, and we were very clear, and I can say that you have a president who was extremely clear regarding China and very sensible regarding this big interest, and is not pushing for an increasing of the conflictuality. And
he's not? I don't know about that, Macron. I would say Nancy Pelosi's trip to Taiwan, I think that increases tensions. Also, Ed Markey making that trip as well. I would say the US government making claims that China has like these spy balloons, which turned out to be a weather balloon. I would say, again, that's just finding a way to escalate the tension. You know, it's like poking China in a way of sorts. So I don't know about that, Macron. I told you he talks out both sides of his mouth.
This is my last point on China and your question. My main objective was to say, through different initiatives and non-coordinated initiatives, we should not push the Chinese to overreact on the short run.
After you made those remarks about Taiwan, almost it seemed by coincidence, a poll came out in which they asked Europeans.
We'll go back to this point right here where he said we should not push them. See, even he realizes, look, this part right here, we should not push the Chinese to overreact on the short run. After you made those remarks about Taiwan, almost it seemed by coincidence, a poll came out in which they asked Europeans whether they would be willing to fight in Taiwan over Taiwan. So Macron says we should not push China, so we should not poke them. But at the same time, he says he stands with the U.S. government and Joe Biden and his decisions on this issue as well.
We should not push the Chinese to overreact on the short run.
After you made those remarks about Taiwan, almost it seemed by coincidence, a poll came out in which they asked Europeans whether they would be willing to fight in Taiwan, over Taiwan. And overwhelmingly, people in Europe said no.
They do not want to be involved in this conflict. Look at this. How should Europe respond to a U.S.-China war over Taiwan? 62% Europeans said remain neutral. 23% said support the U.S. 10% said they don't know. And 4.7% actually said support China. So this poll is very telling that Europeans don't want anything, for the most part, the majority don't want anything to do with this conflict. They want to remain neutral. And I think that's another reason why Macron made the statement that he made, because he probably already heard the sentiments from other European leaders like, whoa, 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 we've got behind the US on other issues, but not this one. When it comes to this China-Taiwan thing, listen, Macron, we're not getting involved in this. So next time you see Biden, you let him know we are not about that life, basically.
Do you think that vindicates the point you were making about Taiwan?
No, I mean, I'm always very cautious with polls because sometimes they are good, sometimes they are bad. And I think you have to design your strategy referring to as well the long-term interest for everybody. I think we have to be very strict on our values and perspective and global order. But I think this world needs less conflictuality because the top priority of our agenda is to fix global problems. I think for me, the top priority of the global agenda is trying to fix the existing crisis, fighting against inequalities and poverty, and fixing climate change and biodiversity. Here are the key challenges of the decades to come, but especially this decade. I would add to this one, building a good framework and common regulation on artificial intelligence. Here are the key elements of a global agenda. To deliver on this agenda, we need cooperation, and especially we need cooperation between China and the US.
So you heard that. DC said Australia has said they won't back the US on Taiwan. So the land down under is out. This will be very telling, very telling. Rupert says Macron should ask Algeria what France should do. Ooh.
We did sign the Paris Agreement because President Xi and President Obama found an agreement a few months before. If there is no agreement between China and the US on all these topics, it's impossible to build a global agenda and to fix these issues. Here are my top priorities.
So what do you guys think about that? Do you think that that's true, that there needs to be some type of cooperation between the US government and with China in order for us to move forward with an issue like the climate crisis? And again, I've said this before, like that has to be a global effort. It can't just be the US does their own thing, China does their own thing, France does their own thing. In reference to climate change, that has to be a global front for people to fight for. So I think that I get where he's coming from in reference to that. But how would Joe Biden take that message? How would the US government take that message? How would they sit back and say, oh, Macron has a point? Or would they say, we do not want to work with China? Because see, here's the thing. If the US government starts to have some type of cooperation with China that Macron is suggesting here, what will they use to fearmonger the American people? What would they use? Oh, and by the way, that doesn't just mean cooperating with China. If you want all countries on board, that would mean Russia as well. Then what? What do they say? You see, then they'd have to change the narrative. Then they couldn't have the same narrative to tell people that China is the enemy or Russia is the enemy. They'd have to find a new enemy. But even then, it wouldn't work in reference to the climate crisis because all these countries would have to cooperate together. What would they do? What would they feed on to fearmonger the American people so that they can continue to make excuses for imperialism and war?
This is why I think for the critical elements where you will increase divisions and conflictuality and tensions between the US and China, we should try to moderate them, to find a way to, discuss quietly and build the relevant fora to decrease tensions, because our priority should be to fix these ones.
Mr. President, always a pleasure to have you on.
This is my.
Okay. So again, like I said, Macron, he talks out both sides of his mouth, but I think we'll give him a little bit of credit for at least being the first to come forward and say, look, this cannot happen. We have to work together to do this. And he also addressed this as well in reference to the summit that happened earlier this week. He also brought up this issue in reference to the climate crisis. Listen to this.
President Emmanuel Macron has called for concrete changes to the global lending system as the new Global Financial Pact summit kicks off in Paris.
In order to succeed and to fix together poverty, climate change, biodiversity, it's absolutely impossible to do it just with public money and official development assistance. So we have to create a collective dynamic, and we need much more from the private sector, much more from the sovereign funds, the asset managers, and all the private money you can channel towards precisely these objectives.
That is very interesting, considering, I wonder, do the banks agree with this? He was a banker. So I wonder if they approve of this as well, because he said we need money from the private sector. I hope everyone heard that in order to tackle this particular issue. He also said in order to fix the poverty situation. Do the banks approve of this?
President Macron will be leading the summit with Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley, who has emerged as a key figure in the fight against climate change.
I ask us today not to leave Paris without understanding that the bolstering of the political ambition that is required must secure transformation and not reform. And I ask us to ensure that those of us who are heads of government and heads of state recognize that the world cannot continue in the shadow of an old imperial order that does not see countries, does not feel countries, does not hear countries, and worse, does not see, feel, or hear people.
And Ross Cullen joins us live from Paris. Ross, more than 50 heads of state at this meeting. Can we expect any concrete outcome?
Well, we heard from Mia Mottley there just in the introduction, the Barbados Prime Minister, real firepower speech from her during the opening session of this summit for a new global financial pact. She was saying that we cannot just mark the card. She said that there needs to be action, not some point in the future in weeks or months. There needs to be action taken today so we can see results tomorrow. And she doesn't mean that kind of broadly in the rhetoric. She means tomorrow, Friday. She is very strong on this drive to try to have action at last in terms of supporting poverty reduction, supporting the fight against climate change, supporting the increased protection and preservation of biodiversity. Real kind of that speech really set the tone. And we also heard from President Macron, the host. You played a short soundbite of him from the introduction. The summit is well underway. We have lots of heads of state here, from President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa. President Lula of Brazil is here. Number 2 in China, Li Qiang, the premier. We can touch on his visit a little bit more in a minute. But there are leaders from across Africa, Latin America, Asia, the Caribbean as well, really trying to show that they are also the stakeholders in this drive to improve and reform the financing model for countries in the global south, so developing and emerging economies.
Okay, so that Global Pact Summit happened. You can find more information about that on YouTube, by the way. There's more people that reported on that. But, when I watched those videos, I had to say to myself, okay, where do countries in Africa fit in reference to this whole global agenda? And I was curious, and I did a little bit of poking, a little bit of peeky peek. And I want to show you what African leaders said in reaction to France. So President Macron is also at this event here. And this is addressed directly to him. And you'll see him in this clip. Where do they fit in all of this? How do they feel? Listen to this.
You know, recently, 7 African countries decided to go and put a call for peace to Ukraine and to Russia. And we raised a number of issues. Zambia was represented, Comoros was represented, Republic of Congo was represented, Senegal was represented, Uganda, as well as South Africa. So we were all represented, and Egypt as well. So we were all at one, that even as we were going to address an issue of the war which has had a negative impact on the African continent, which is the rise in prices for food, rise in prices for fertilizers, we were clear that we are not going there as beggars.
Woo! Let's pause right there. Let's pause. Okay, it's getting a little hot in here. So I just want to remind you, a couple of weeks ago, I reported on the fact that even though countries in Africa chose to remain neutral in reference to this conflict with Russia and Ukraine, they have actually been hit pretty hard in reference to this war, because they too depend on that fertilizer, and they are having difficulty growing food. So they are being impacted in that way, even though they didn't choose to take a side at all, just chose to remain neutral. So you know what he just said? He said there were leaders who came forward to call for peace in reference to Ukraine. But he also just told you, when we come to the table, we are not coming there to be beggars. And this is important. When I saw this clip, I was like, say it again for the people in the back. Because oftentimes when you have these global summits, these global agendas, a lot of times, like countries in Africa, it's like they're just left at the bottom of the list, or they're left out, or they're not considered to be a leader in the movement. Right now, you hear people like President Macron speaking up about these issues. You've heard Lula actively speaking up about these issues. Obviously, Vladimir Putin speaking up about these issues, the whole BRICS team and things like that. But oftentimes, the African countries are drowned out a little bit. So I appreciate the fact that he said, when we come to the table, we are not coming there to be beggars. Oftentimes, the countries in Africa get what's left over. They get the end resort. Okay? So again, they are being affected heavily by this conflict with Russia and Ukraine, even though they did not even take a side in the conflict. He goes on, listen to this.
We're not going to ask for a favor to both Ukraine and Russia. We were going there to say, open up the Black Sea Channel so that the grains and the fertilizers should go into the world market. So we were not on a begging mission, even as we are in great need as a continent and all that. That should go to demonstrate that Africa should never be seen as a continent that needs generosity. We want to be treated as equals.
Boom. That part right there. That part right there. They want to be treated as equals. They're not coming there to beg. They're not coming there to ask for this sort of generosity. Let's make sure we help out the poor Africans. They're not looking for that. They want to sit at that table with people like Macron as an equal. As an equal. So what I think is really important for people to hear who are at this summit, and you can see there's Lula right there, and there's Macron. The look on his face is kind of funny. But, you think about these things. And I think it's very important that he made that statement.
Even in the multilateral institutions, we want to be treated as equals. And if our equity is at a low ebb, there must be ways in which that can be addressed.
So we talk about the multipolar, we talk about that like multipolarity. We've talked about all these different countries working together and not having like a unipower, but like a multipolarity, right? And what that would look like. And what that means is that even also for the countries of Africa, they're looking for a horizontal organization, meaning that if you're going to be leaders on the world stage, they're going to have a say in this as well, as an equal, not as someone that you brought along with you to help them out. And that needed to be said. I'll let him finish this part here.
To us, this is very important. Our sovereignty is one of the things that we hold on dearly to. And we demonstrated that very clearly to both President Zelensky and to President Putin when it came to this issue. Even as there were suggestions that, yes, we can donate this, we can donate that, we said, we want you to release these grains and fertilizers to the world market so that the world can trade in these commodities and other issues we can handle in a different way. I wanted to make that point so that it should be understood where Africa has evolved up to. We want to be key players on the world stage.
The look on Macron's face, I'm sorry.
Understood where Africa has evolved up to. We want to be key players on the world.
Look at the look on his face.
World stage. Want to be key players even in the financial markets and in the MDBs.
That part right there. TLC said, ain't too proud to beg. African countries said, no, we are. We're not begging. We're going to be seen as your equal or, just leave us out of this altogether. And I think that needed to be said. So you have Macron talking out both sides of his mouth there. It'll be interesting to see what transpires from here because I'm curious to see how this works out. I'm curious to see how this works out, but it should be interesting. What I will tell you is, based on what Macron has said, I would take it with a grain of salt because the thing is he flip-flops a lot. So you could see that in that interview with CNN. He was like, well, we want this, but we feel this way and we feel that way. He was trying to both sides it. And so that tells you a lot about him. But the message is still out there. It was on CNN. So I know a lot of people saw that he said that the US government and China are going to have to come to some sort of cooperation in order for us all to move together. And he called out those two in particular. Thank you for the super chat, Janice. Pod Save America is a rebrand of the Clinton campaign adjacent Correct the Record, who spent the primaries between BS and Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, lying about her record and smearing Sanders supporters. They are poison, 100%. Thank you for calling that out, Janice. Thank you, Philosophical Thirst Worms. Macron is the oddest neo-lib politician in the world. He is all over the place. You can find quotes of him from all over the political spectrum. Thank you so much for saying that. Sean says all the BRIC countries got more resources than the rest of Europe. Shout out to MC for becoming a Sabby member. Whoop, whoop, whoopity, whoop, whoop, whoop. And thank you for the super chat, Steve. Australian here. Our mainstream media are nonstop prepping us for war with China. I haven't heard anything but pro-war stances from Murdoch and Nine. Two companies own nearly all our press. Interesting. Thank you for letting me know that, Steve. You guys see what's happening? See what's going on? I'll take the comment on Rockfin, Eric. Oh, thank you for the super chat, Roger. Sab, it mean not having for them to depend on China also. Roger, I'm going to need for you to space out the word. I don't know what this means sometimes. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Jim. On Fire Blues, get it while you can. Thank you so much for that. Okay. We are moving on to our next story. Ice Cube is getting buzz again based on a video that he released on Twitter. Now, we're going to look at that video and then we're going to go back a little bit because Ice Cube has been getting heat from Democrats and from Black Democrats as well, ever since he said that Black people should not vote for the Democratic Party without getting some type of concession, when he talked about having that contract for Black America. Well, Ice Cube is back, and Ice Cube is not backing away. And he's talking about gatekeepers. And I think this is a message that everyone needs to hear. Before we get into it, if you haven't had a chance to do so, don't forget to smash that like button. That helps me with the algo. Thank you. I want you to hear what Ice Cube has to say. And I think everybody needs to take this to heart, to be honest. So here goes Cube.
Yo, what's cracking? You know what it is. It's your homeboy Ice Cube. And some of you may not have realized that I'm not part of the club. And a lot of you listening to me right here, right now, you're not part of the club either. And what I realized with the club is what makes them so mad is when you don't want to be a part of their fucking club. That pisses them off.
I am not a part of the club. And I know a lot of you watching are not a part of the club either. And I piss a lot of people off. And a lot of times I don't even really go after people. Like some people go after people like on social media about this shit. I don't even go after people like that. I go after politicians for not doing what they're supposed to do because they're supposed to be we're their constituents. But it makes people angry. It makes people angry, especially those who are, true blue diehard Democrats that will never leave the party and can only see themselves as a Democrat and only that, as if you don't exist if you're not a part of a party. It's really interesting. But I'm not a part of the club, and I'm okay with that. But with something I've noticed, though, when I was a part of that club, when I voted for Barack Obama in 2008, and we're going to talk about him tonight, when I voted for him and I was rah, rah, go Obama, oh, people loved me. People started to dislike me once I started to support Bernie Sanders. Then people were like, oh no, why would you go for him instead of Hillary Clinton? Why would you go for him instead of Joe Biden or Kamala Harris? That was when I started to see a little bit of it. But it wasn't until I fully broke away. And I mean, I'm a registered independent. I fully broke away from the Democratic Party. That was when I really saw it. Or people were just like, shame on you. You're going to give us Trump. And that's when I realized just how brainwashed people are. It's really interesting.
What club am I talking about? I'm talking about the club of gatekeepers that we all got to deal with. You know who they are, and they definitely know who they are. A lot of people would be like, what? Who? Come on, man, stop playing. So ever since I put out the contract with Black America, they've been fucking with me. Yep. Here and there, this and that. But it's cool, I expect that. I've been working with, on the big three for a long time. And you know how they've been fucking with me with that. I done made it, plain, simple, and clear what they've been doing. The NBA been fucking with us. Now, a lot of people might say, like, well, but Cube, you want to work with the NBA. Really, I don't give a fuck about working with the NBA. What I want them to do, when I say work with us, is to stop working against us. Stop doing that bullshit behind the scenes that we know you're doing.
The Big Three, for those who not aware, is a basketball league that Ice Cube has started. So some people feel threatened by that, particularly the NBA, of course. How dare you create a separate league? This is the way people think in this country. So that has ruffled some feathers with people, but Ice Cube wants to do things a little bit differently. Let him do what he wants to do. I don't see what the big deal is, you know? But again, it's the gatekeeping. It's the need to control people, the need to limit people, to place these limitations on people so that they only have one or two spaces to go to. They only have one or two parties they want you to go to. And anything you try to do that's outside of that, that's against that status quo, they'll call it fringe, chaotic, problematic. They use words like that. So shout out to Ice Cube for doing his damn thing.
Mainstream media, you know, they ain't fucking with us. And that's cool. We can do it ourselves. You know what I'm saying? We still on the rise without these motherfuckers. So we don't need them. You don't need them. You know? So what am I going to do to deal with these motherfucking gatekeepers? Well, what I'm going to do is go on a Fuck the Gatekeepers podcast tour. And I'm going to go talk to everybody, you know, and get a chance to get my message out to the people.
Now, when he said this, there were people in this thread on Twitter said, does that mean RBN? You should go on RBN? Like, I think I'm hoping that he would come on to independent media, and particularly the channels that don't have like hundreds of thousands of subs or a million subs, which is usually where people will go to. And that's unfortunate because I do think some of the smaller channels are actually doing really great work. They just don't get that attention because they don't have the numbers, which is unfortunate. But people were saying that, Cube, come on RBN, da-da-da. I think it would be awesome if Ice Cube came on RBN. I'm not trying to, you know, toot our own horn here, but I think that would be an honest base conversation that he could have with working class people. I think that would be great. But we'll see. I don't know. We'll see.
Be able to let people hear from me, you know. And you know, you might agree, you might not. But the important thing is, you know, for me to go on these platforms, say what I feel about what I think. And, you know, some people may get pissed off because I'm going to talk to everybody. I'm not playing. And it's gonna be a crazy summer. It's gonna be fun. Appreciate y'all. Always support the Big Three. Hopefully I'm doing stuff that you guys dig. You know, I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for people that's bored as fuck in the summer with summer sports and want something cool like the Big Three. So here we are. Appreciate you. Much love, much respect from your homeboy Ice Cube. Remember that.
Okay, so he put that announcement out there. I'm sure we would love to have him on RBN. The thing is, we don't have contact information. People have been asking, like, contact him. Like, we don't have contact information for him. That's the thing. A lot of these people you just can't contact because their information isn't public. But it would be great if he came on RBN. But why is he making that speech? Why is he bringing this up about the gatekeepers, the people who put limitations on you and shit? And I'm going to tell you something about that in reference to independent media as well. But first, let's go back to what really made people angry at Ice Cube. Ice Cube brought up this contract for Black America. Ice Cube brought up this astonishing idea that maybe instead of Black people just blindly voting for the Democratic Party and not getting anything in return but lies, maybe there should be a contract that they sign that they are going to fulfill those tangibles for Black Americans in order to get our vote. And honestly, that makes sense, right? I told you before, other groups ask for concessions. a lot of us, a lot of African Americans, we end up voting for the Democratic Party out of fear. But that contract is what made people upset. So here's where that came from. Listen to this. This is an interview we had with Boyce Watkins.
A few years ago, before I started the Big Three, me and my partner, Jeff Quantness, we put together what was called the American Jobs Pact. And it was a cool program where the community could work with industry, could work with the government, and nobody spent an extra dime to work with each other and get training, community service, you fill your work, the jobs you need. So it was a great plan. And then I started the Big Three, and it kind of absorbed all my time trying to start a professional basketball league from scratch. Just absorbs all your brain space. So we kind of put that to the side. And then when the George Floyd thing happened, I was thinking we do need our own Declaration of Independence. It's a trip that you make that same analogy, because I said we need something that deals with all these problems. Now, look, this ain't nothing new. I didn't bring out anything that's not obvious that they know about. There's smart people who helped me, people like Robert Jones, people, Chris Broussard, who even helped us out, who had a plan for neo-reconstruction. And then, you had other people helping me out on these other aspects of it. We even had people like Derek Hamilton, who's a great economic scholar, really focus on helping us fine tune it. We've gotten advice from people like Andrew Young. So, we went across the board and was real broad on trying to make sure we, touched all the points. And then it was just really about actually adding real hard data to it, and not just have these broad strokes, but have data that really, kind of coincided with what we was asking for and talking about. And so doing that, it just became very comprehensive. It was a thing that really showed that we were on target and we was hitting all the points. Now, the politicians know this. This is nothing new. I didn't come up with rocket science. It's political will. We got to make them do this. It's nothing they'll say, oh man, I didn't know all this, Cube. Wow, damn, this is an epiphany. I did not know. That's not it. It's about us saying, this is what we want. This is not what we're asking for. This is what we're demanding.
That part right there, demanding instead of asking for. He's spot on here when he says that this is not something that's new. He didn't make this up. He sat down with other scholars, but the politicians are very much aware that these things are needed and that the Black community should have. The problem is that over the years, through election cycles, we've continued to vote for them and we got nothing in return. So when they see us do this for like decades, they don't really feel like they need to give us anything to get our vote. All they have to do is continue to fearmonger us and tell us you're going to get Trump. They're going to kick you out of the US. You're going to become this. You're going to become that. That's all they have to do to get us to vote for them. That's why they don't really try. We don't demand anything. We don't. So Deneen has a point. She said Black folks were hot with Ice Cube because he urged us to get something for our vote. The Democratic programming is on a whole new level. Most of the people that I saw on Twitter that were mad with Ice Cube, it was Black people. That didn't make any damn sense. Some of the comments I saw, some people were like, oh, so what? You're going to vote Republican? That was not what he said. What he said was, you should get something for your vote. What are you going to do for us? Every constituent should ask that question, by the way. We are their constituents, but we just don't. We just been voting for people just because. Standing in line, it really made me feel some kind of way. And I have to stress this. When I saw on the news, and my friend was sending me pictures in Atlanta, I saw on the news, I saw elderly Black people standing in the line to vote for Joe Biden, waiting 14 hours in line in Atlanta, Georgia. People with canes and wheelchairs. For what? Joe Biden won't even help you with the policing situation. The response to this, how do they respond? Fund the police more. Now they're building Cop City. All those elderly Black people, all those people who stood in line for hours to vote for Jim Crow Joe. And look at the response. But according to Joe Biden, you're not Black if you didn't vote for him. You see what I mean? You see the problem with the programming? And so here comes Ice Cube, who is Black, and says, hey, we should probably ask for something for our vote. And everybody lost their shit. Black Twitter turned on Ice Cube. All of a sudden, this went on for days. All of a sudden, people are like, cancel Ice Cube. That's it. I'm done. Just like that. They wanted to cancel him because he told you to ask for something. That would show you how the Democratic Party even found a way to get Black people to turn on each other. Isn't that something?
And we understand you might not can bite off all of this, but bite off as much as you can chew and see if that satisfies us. Let us see what you can do to push this over the line, because doing little things here and there not going to cut it. So, that was the real approach of putting this together. Now we're in the second phase, make them do it. That's where, brothers like yourself, there's other people out there pushing the same line that, hey, don't just give up that vote for nothing. Give it up for something. And if you don't know what you want, tell them you want something that's in the contract with Black America. We wrote something out for you where you can at least say, hey, get this part done.
That's right.
And so, that's the plan, and it's working. We got both sides of the aisle now. First they didn't want to hear what we had to say. Now they're begging for a meeting and a talk. And that's what we want.
Yep.
We want to be heard, and then we want them to support this, because we're not asking for the world. We just want fairness and equality.
That part right there. They didn't want you to have that. They didn't want you to have that. JB says, Sabby, many Black people have been fear-mongered to vote for Dems. They don't want to rock the boat because they're afraid of us ending up back in slavery. Our demands made the change, not fear. That's right. Like, this is it's crazy that more people were upset with him than they were at Joe Biden for co-writing the crime bills. That's how gone. Than they were at Kamala Harris for how she treated prisoners in California, the truancy law that she created where she locked up Black parents. People were more upset with Ice Cube than they were at Joe and Kamala based on their record alone. That's how people have lost the plot. Now, when he talks about that meeting, he reached out to both sides. He reached out to the Biden administration side. He reached out to the Trump administration side. He reached out to both sides to sit down and have a discussion about the contract for Black America. Chris Cuomo, when he was still on CNN at that time, tried to take that as an opportunity to smear Ice Cube while Ice Cube was on the show. So he tries to say, basically, he was trying to lead the audience to think that Ice Cube was for Trump. And that was not the case. But this is what they do. This guy is not on CNN anymore. But listen to this.
Now he wants to work with President Trump. Here's what the president had to say most recently about Black Lives Matter
The first time I ever heard of Black Lives Matter, I said, that's such a terrible term because it's such a racist term. It's a term that sows division between blacks and whites and everybody else. And it's a very bad term for blacks. But they were very angry. It's a Marxist organization.
With all that going on and how the president continues to speak about there being no systemic inequality.
So you see what he did there? He wanted to show that speech of Trump talking about Black Lives Matter after he just told you that Ice Cube wants to work with Trump. Ice Cube never said he wanted to work for Trump or with Trump. He said he presented the contract to Black America to both sides. But you'll have to hear from Ice Cube yourself. Chris Cuomo, see what they did on CNN? They do that on purpose. You don't have to, I don't agree with what Trump said there about Black Lives Matter, but that had nothing to do with what actually happened. And Ice Cube is actually going to grill him on that.
It's no shock that Ice Cube got some heat for deciding to work with the Trump administration. He wants to deal with it. I want to understand it. So should you. So here is Ice Cube on Prime Time. Thank you for taking the opportunity, brother. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Chris, your lead-ins are a little misleading.
How so?
So he lied on him. And then when he introduces him, he calls him brother. You know, Ice Cube was a little bit nicer than I would have been. I would have been saying, don't call me. You don't know me. He would have called me sister. I'd been like, oh, no, don't call me sister after you just lied on me. But he sets him straight.
A little misleading.
How so?
Well, the Platinum Plan is not my plan. I came up with the contract with Black America. And I didn't run to go work with any campaign. Both campaigns contacted me. Both campaigns wanted to talk to me about the contract with Black America. One campaign said, we love what you have, but let's really dig into it after the election. And one campaign said, we love what you have. Do you mind talking to us about it?
I'll let you guess which was which, but I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, the campaign that said, let's talk about it after the election was the Biden administration. That was Biden. Let me vote for me first, Cube. Vote for me. Then we may talk about it. And the Trump team basically said, okay, let's have a meeting. Very telling, isn't it? Mm-hmm. But if you don't vote for Joe, you ain't black.
That's what I did. So I didn't run to nobody. And so that was real misleading to me.
Well, I didn't say you ran to anybody. I said that you had taken a pivot.
Well, you said I ran over to the Trump team instead of the Biden team. That's just not true.
Well, but you are working with the Trump team instead of the Biden team, and people are giving you heat for it. What do you say to them?
But he's talking to the Trump team because that was the team who responded and said, let's sit down and talk about it now. Whereas the Biden team said, let's sit down and talk about it after the election. So you see how Chris Cuomo, again, he's trying to put the blame on Ice Cube and make it seem like, oh, Ice Cube came up with this contract with a bunch of people and just decided, let me go work with Trump with this. Totally leaving out the fact that the Biden, who dropped the ball here? Joe Biden dropped the ball. That's who dropped the ball. This is not on Ice Cube. If Joe Biden should have gave the same response that the Trump team gave, but he did not. You know why? Because Joe Biden wasn't really interested and had no intention of doing it. That's why. Not interested, no intention of doing it. He had no intention of doing any type of contract for black people in this country. That's why he said, let's talk about it after the election. And then after the election, he was going to ghost you.
Well, I'm willing to work with both teams, but I'm just working with whoever is willing to work with me. So the Trump campaign came to me and asked me to explain to them some of the contract with Black America. That's what I did. I'm not playing no more of these games, these political games. We're not part of a team. We have very broad problems, especially the wealth gap in this country when it comes to Black Americans. So I'm going to whoever's in power and I'm going to speak to them about our problems. Specifically, I'm not going there talking about minorities. I'm not going there talking about people of color or diversity or none of that stuff. I'm going there for Black Americans, the ones who are the descendants of slaves. And that's what I'm going to talk to anybody who's in power with that. So if anybody got a problem with that, it seems like a personal problem.
Well, here.
Let's talk about this piece that he just brought up here where he said, I'm not going there to talk about like people of color, diversity, that type of thing. I think that's really important that he said that, because this contract is specifically something that was written up for Black Americans that would help Black Americans. Oftentimes when you bring up those issues, I've seen this in the workplace as well, you bring up those issues that are specific to Black people, the powers that be try to turn it over into some big diversity coalition where we can include all people of color. And then all of a sudden, the agenda and the items that you had laid out that specifically apply to Black people and not all people of color, that agenda is overtaken by the powers that be, and they water it down. And it's no longer what you had. And this is exactly why a lot of times for the Black community, this is why we get watered down policies. This is why we get watered down, because other people come in and they take it over and they make it into this whole giant initiative for the people that it wasn't even intended for. And that's important to say. And people have to understand that. Some people don't like to hear it, whatever. Because let me be clear with you, okay? I have friends of all different races, different ethnicities, and I'm going to keep it real. My friends that are Latino, when they go to the table about these issues, they bring up the issues for their community. They don't go to the table and say, yeah, you know, like those of us who are people of color, they go and speak about specific issues that relate to the Latino community. People that I have worked with that have been immigrants here in this country, when they go to the table, they bring up issues specifically related to the immigrant community and about getting citizenship status in this country and the processes that take forever, specifically about their issues for their people. But the moment someone like Ice Cube or Black people try to do that, it's always taken and turned into something else where all these other people are included and they're not even affected. I watched this happen at Boston University, by the way. I watched this shit. How you have a conference where we're supposed to be doing a day of healing after George Floyd, a virtual conference, town hall, lets everybody come together and do these different sessions. Then all of a sudden, all these other people are brought into it that had nothing to do with this. Nada. And then to make it worse, at the end of the day, there are a list of ideas and demands and things that need to be done and goals. And when the conference and the workshop is over, the goals are never achieved. It becomes just a workshop and that's it. Yeah, we had this workshop one time about it, but nothing ever came from it. Speaking from experience, that's why you don't see me at BU no more.
Here's the problem, and it is very personal, as you know, for a lot of people of color, because they'll say, well, why would you pick Trump when he says there's no such thing as systemic inequality?
I'm not picking nobody. He's the president.
But why do you think he'd want to do something for the community when he says there's no such thing as systemic inequality?
I don't know what he want to do. I just know what the man said. I know what he said to the country. I've never met Donald Trump. So I don't know what he's going to do. I just know what he said he was going to do. So both of them have a plan. Both of them say they're going to do something. And who knows what's really going to happen after November 3rd. Nobody knows from each side. We're all hoping that candidates keep their campaign promises. So that's just it.
The problem was Chris didn't want Ice Cube to have the conversation at all. That's the thing. They didn't want him to have a conversation with Donald Trump, period. Whether Trump initiated it, whether, someone else initiated, they didn't want that conversation to happen because, again, what did I tell you? They don't want you to talk to someone on the other team.
So let's look at it this way. I think that you're right to be skeptical. Let's start with the Democrats, because even though there is a traditional connection between black voters and the Democrats. You could also say you've been let down or forgotten by Democrats in a lot of situations that would have mattered. Then you say, all right, so then what makes one side better than the other? That's where you get in trouble, which is, do you really think that Donald Trump can be trusted as much as you could trust Joe Biden?
This is a binary way of thinking. The Democratic Party has let down the black community, but how dare you leave the Democratic Party? How dare you try to talk to someone else who's not a part of the Democratic Party? You're going to get into trouble. That's colonizer bullshit. Wake up, people. Who is Chris Cuomo to tell? See, Ice Cube is so nice in this interview. Who is Chris Cuomo to tell Ice Cube, who Ice Cube is a black man? Who are you to tell him where he can and can't go? Who are you to tell him, oh, well, you're going to get in trouble? Really? This type of rhetoric, this type of mentality, this is the reason why we went away from something like the civil rights movement, which actually gained a lot of steam. It was not popular at the time. I want to be very clear. This is why we went away from that and we went into neoliberalism, because we listened to shit like that. What Chris Cuomo just said. No, you're going to do this. You're going to get into trouble. What is that? What is this? This ain't no damn plantation, Chris. Who are you to tell people, oh, don't go over there? You might get in trouble. This is how people think in this country. Disgusting.
I don't think I'm not trusting any of them. I'm just going by action. That's all I'm going by. I'm not going by words. I'm not going by rhetoric, not going by media spin, not going by none of that. You know, I'm not on nobody's team. I'm not on team blue, not on team red.
So then I have that wrong.
Hold on. I'm an independent person. And I believe that's what black people need to do, is become independent. And we need to get something for our vote. You know, that may not happen, but it's going to happen.
It's got to happen. It's got to happen. Nothing changes if nothing changes. I look, if I had brought you here to fight with you, you would have known it. What I'm saying is, I think I did get it wrong, and I want to make sure I get it right.
Duh, you lied. It's not even just like, I think I got it wrong. No, you lied. This is the news that you're supposed to trust? CNN, 24-hour news? We're a real journalist. This is who you're supposed to trust? He didn't get his facts straight? Come on, man. No.
So saying you're working with the Trump team is wrong. What you did was, when they asked to talk to you about it, you said yes. If Biden had asked to talk to you about it now, you would have gone to them the same way. It's not about you choosing anything. It's you working with everybody who's got a chance of doing anything.
I'm working with whoever's in power. Yeah, I'll work with both. Whoever's in power, I'm going to work with. So whoever wins, they'll hear from me.
Okay, so I'm glad you came to clear it up. So Ice Cube is not with the Trump campaign. He's just given his ideas, and anybody who wants to do something with him, fine. Do you believe they are doing anything with your ideas?
I believe, they looked at the contract with Black America and they updated their plan, but it's their plan. Now, I have my plan. My plan is broad. It goes beyond the public sector. It goes into the private sector, banks, even the movie industry. So we got to deal with a lot of different, companies, corporations, and even government when it comes to solving this problem. I believe it's a bipartisan problem. I believe it's a bipartisan problem when it comes to the issues, when it comes to blacks in America and what's going on. It's not a Democrat problem. It's not for them to solve. It's not for the Republicans to solve. It's for both of them to solve. They do it when it comes to debt ceiling. They do it when it comes to getting us in wars. They seem to come together when it's something that really affects America. And I don't think nothing affects America more than the situation that Black Americans find ourselves in. This country.
And this is what they'll do. Then they'll send out pawns who are also Black on social media to smear Ice Cube. And that's what some of them did, who are journalists, to come after him and to smear him so that, oh no, Black people, don't you dare start to get any ideas. Especially when he mentioned they can have bipartisanship when it comes to these wars, when it comes to the debt ceiling, when it comes to anything else. Don't you dare start talking about bipartisanship. And that's exactly what happened. The PR call goes out, especially to the Black journalists. Go in and stop this right now. And then everybody else see it on Twitter and like, oh my God, what's wrong with Ice Cube? He's trying to tell people to go to Trump, which was not what he said. Most people won't watch this, didn't see this full interview, won't do the research. They'll just go off of what they saw. One Black journalist write in the Washington Post, and that's how they get people. Send it all over social media. They're doing the same thing with Dr. West right now. You have to pay attention. Not all, what does Cornel West say? Not all, I think he was the one who said, not all skin folk are kinfolk. Yeah, I mean, one of the greatest tools of white supremacy is to use other Black people to keep Black people down. I'll take that comment on Rockfin, Eric. Because I believe that I got it wrong, so I'm going to say... Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. Don't forget, Cube did tons of YouTube shows after the contract with Black America. I saw him on Dr. Boyce Watkins. Yeah, we played that clip. The Queens, when Vivica lost her mind thinking he supported Trump. Yana Devine with Lord Jamar. Oh, look, you got him on screen with Watkins now. Oh, yeah, Roland Martin, who the tension was so thick you can cut it with a knife. It's nothing for O'Shea, SR Senior, to go onto YouTube shows. Yeah, those shows also have hundreds and thousands of views, though, subscribers, Roger. And thank you for this tip, Jim. Are you live? Your truth telling is bleeding all over the floor. Sabby is bleeding on is beautiful. Thank you, Jim. I think. Thank you. I think. Steve, 43K subscribers. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, we're on the road to 50K. Roger says, sorry, wasn't trying to go over my 50 character limit and go from $2 to $5. What the man was saying, being treated as an equal, that also means not having to depend on China for their Belt and Road initiative. That's a good point, Roger. She's Black says, if he endorses Dr. West, all hell will break loose. Dems are going to go crazy. Thank you for the super chat, Manna. I don't know if it's their goal, but the Democrats are doing a great job pushing Blacks towards Donald Trump. I told people about that, man. I tried to warn people. Thank you, Felonious. You rock, Sabby. Thanks for all the great news and views. Happy to catch a live stream finally. Thank you. Thank you, Aries Mars Express. People need to learn that the left means people over profits. Full stop. Don't vote for people who are not that. 1 million people died in the pandemic because Biden and Trump chose profits over people. Good point. Thank you, David. Do you think Ice Cube would support Cornel West? He could be an important voice and one that makes sense with Dr. West's message. That's a good question. I don't know. But you're right. Like, that would be awesome if he did. Bad Cookie Sabbies, you should get Ice Cube on. You could totally get him. Yeah, don't have contact information. I don't know. Like, honestly, like, if the contact info isn't public, or I don't know someone that knows that person, yeah, I have no way to reach them. They would have to reach me, and they would have to know I exist. So there's that too. Thank you for the super chat, Roger. Blacks got Willie Lynch to turn against Cube. Yes, they did. That went on for days, you guys. Thank you, none of your business. The abused will return to the abuser. We are fear. Thank you, Joe. Get your JSU Tiger Heart Tiger season tickets. Okay. Get your JSU tickets. Thank you for that. And thank you, Dogs FTW. I'd like to know what's in the contract. I think you can look it up online. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, that was an interesting conversation. What's that? Please understand. Sabby, 6 degrees of separation. Some here know someone who knows Ice Cube. That would be interesting if they did. We'll have to see. Crazy Boy says, somebody get Sabby the number. Yeah. The Oracle says, I feel Cube is going to be down with Dr. West. We'll see. We'll see. But you know, he is running third party. So maybe he might look at that as though good. Someone running outside the system, you know, maybe he will. Okie doke. We're moving on to our next story. I'm going to give you a little bit of laughter here when we start this story because I thought it was pretty funny. You know, there's a lot of people on the interwebs right now talking about how third-party candidates and also people that are primary challenging Joe Biden are spoiler candidates, how it's basically a vote for Donald Trump. You're going to help Trump win, that kind of scenario. It's really interesting considering the fact that Joe Biden, the Democratic Party, has already announced that there will be no primary debates for those competitors. So it's really, really interesting when you think about it. And even though that has been said, RFK Jr. is preparing for the debates. So get ready for this one. Some of you are not on Twitter, so I know you haven't seen it probably. But RFK Jr. is saying he is already getting in shape for his debate with President Biden. You got to see this, and I'm going to tell you, this is going somewhere, I promise. RFK Jr. tweeted, getting in shape for my debates with President Biden. This cracked me up, guys. You got to see this to believe it.
Okay, let's go. That's a fit boy. Okay, let's go.
We'll go to the thread after this. This is funny. So,
that's a fit boy.
I gotta say this. First and foremost. First, I thought it was funny because I was like, is this for real? 2, I was also shocked because I said, I didn't know RFK Jr. was ripped like that. Like, I seriously, like JB, I think was the one who sent me the picture, and then someone sent me the video, and I was like, I didn't know that RFK Jr. had all those muscles underneath that suit. So like, I didn't know. So this just shocked me, right? So he goes on to say, this is pretty interesting. By the way, this has millions of views, as you can imagine. He goes on to say, as president, I will restore America as the global example of health and well-being, not through pills or syringes, but through character and self-discipline. And I will continue to walk the walk and lead by example. He goes on, he talks about the pandemics. I'm going to skip that because it's YouTube. Sorry. He goes on to say, conversely, we must never allow ourselves to succumb to fear. Fear disabled both the immune system and the capacity for critical thought, which is key to the survival of democracy. We will restore our health as we reunite our communities and build our nation. So start doing your morning calisthenics, everybody. Get yourself in shape for the Kennedy presidency. Kudos to Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg for setting a physical fitness example for Americans with the Octagon Challenge. P.S. And yes, I can do more than 10 push-ups. That was my last set. And Paul said, why would anyone do 8.5 push-ups? He said, final set. So RFK Jr. is preparing for a debate. He wants to debate Joe Biden. Marianne wants to debate Joe Biden. Cornel West wants to debate Joe Biden. But there are people out there that feels this shouldn't happen at all. They shouldn't be running. You shouldn't support them. And one of those people is a platform actually called Pod Save America. Shout out to Case Study QB for this clip. Pod Save America discussing voter shaming as a strategy. Hold on to your seats for this one. They even say the quiet part out loud.
If the people who voted for Jill Stein, just Jill Stein, in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania had voted for Hillary instead, Donald Trump would have never become president. That's it, right? And so, I'm sure there's a lot of Cornel West fans out there. You live in a swing state, you vote for Cornel West, you're helping Trump become president. That's it. And you can say, oh, well, it's Joe Biden's fault. He did this or that. No. It's your decision. You get to decide whether you want to help Donald Trump become president or you don't. And if you want to help him, then you should vote for Cornel West, or you should vote for Joe Manchin and his no labels ticket, or you can vote for, RFK Jr. if he decides to run third party. But if you don't want to help Trump become president, you got to vote for Joe Biden. That's it. Very simple. Now, I think messaging to voters who might actually make this decision is probably a little different, I would say, because
No, chastising works.
Yeah. I do think you need to explain why these candidates would not be good candidates for president. I really do, because I think we could get tripped up in that, because I think if you are one of these voters and you hear a bunch of people yelling at you to vote for Joe Biden and because you have to, I don't think it's going to be very effective. And I think you have to say why RFK Jr. is not a good choice, why Cornel West is not a good choice, why Joe Manchin, or whoever it may be, is not a good choice. So that is something that I think Democrats are going to have to figure out in the next year. Finally,
let's chime in here. Let's hear this again. Let's chime in.
If the people who voted for Jill Stein, just Jill Stein, in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania had voted for Hillary instead, Donald Trump would have never become president.
No. Let's talk about how this works. You see, we've had this discussion. We had a third-party summit over at RBN. We had this discussion with Jill Stein and with other people that have run third party and vote third party. That is actually not true. This idea that the third party candidates pull people from the Democratic Party, Jill Stein has said this so herself, that's actually not true. Historically, that's not true. The people who voted for Jill Stein wanted to vote for Jill Stein. The people who voted for Hillary Clinton want Hillary Clinton, or they were afraid of Donald Trump, right? And the people who voted for Donald Trump wanted Donald Trump. He mentions Wisconsin. He mentions Michigan, but he leaves out the part that Hillary Clinton did not campaign in the Rust Belt. Why should the people in the Rust Belt support a candidate that basically felt like she didn't even have the time to give them when she was running her race in the first damn place? Think about that. So this whole idea that it's Jill Stein's fault, no. Because you know what would have happened? Those people that voted for Jill Stein, if there was no Jill Stein or no other third-party candidate, they would have stayed home. And I know because I've had this conversation multiple times. Those people would have stayed home. If they wanted to vote for Hillary Clinton, they would have voted for her. You see what they try to do? Let's go on.
That's it, right? And so, I'm sure there's a lot of Cornel West fans out there. You live in a swing state, you vote for Cornel West, you're helping Trump become president.
What are the swing states? Let's talk about this for a second, guys. They like to bring this up. Once upon a time, they used to say that Florida was a swing state. I wouldn't say that's the case anymore. Florida's red. Some people push North Carolina is a swing state. North Carolina is not a swing state. It went blue that one time since I've been alive for 2008 for Obama, and then it went back red again. What are the swing states they're referring to? Maybe a state like Pennsylvania, right? So this is them trying to voter shame people that, well, if you support Jill Stein, someone like Jill Stein or Cornel West or whatever, then you're giving this vote to Donald Trump. No. You're giving the vote to the person that you vote for. And this idea that you should only be participating in two parties, this sort of binary way of thinking, it's draconian and it's old. It's 2023. We're one of the few countries in the world that doesn't have more than two parties. Canada has more parties. Like, this doesn't make any sense, people. So you have Pod Save America here, which, by the way, totally crapped on Bernie Sanders' campaign. Totally smeared Bernie Sanders. And this is the podcast that AOC chose to go on to this year, by the way. The podcast that shamed Bernie Sanders voters. You see what I mean? It's not even just about the third party for them. It's also about anyone who's voting for the people that are not a part of that status quo. These three dudes on Pod Save America are there to make sure that the status quo remains in place. That's their job. Let's continue.
That's it. And you can say, oh, well, it's Joe Biden's fault he did this or that. No. It's your decision. You get to decide whether you want to help Donald Trump become president or you don't.
So here he is carrying weight for Joe Biden. You can say, well, it's Joe Biden's fault. Well, he did this and this. And he said, no, it's your decision. So he wants you to totally just forget about everything that Joe Biden has done wrong and vote for him anyway, because otherwise you'll end up with someone like Donald Trump. He's blaming the voter. And the Democratic Party is totally behind this podcast, by the way. These Pod Save Americas, these people are just shills for the Democratic Party. They're there to keep you in the Democratic Party. There's a reason why they can get certain people to come on their show that we could never get to come on here, because they go with the status quo. And that's what the Democratic Party likes. These guys are pretty well off, right? They want you to keep doing the same thing so that they have a show. Did I say the quiet part out loud? They want you to keep doing the same thing so that they still have a show. Think about that. Doesn't matter with me. It doesn't matter with me. If you vote Democrat, you vote third party, I'll still be here because I cover news and interviews. My job is not to keep you in a Democratic Party. So it's all connected, all of it. And they're here to voter shame people. It is people like him and that podcast that have actually pulled people away from the Democratic Party more so than I have with that talking point. That whack ass talking point. It's your fault. Keep voter shaming people. How did that work out? 2016, how did it work out? How did it work out for Hillary Clinton to call people deplorables? Did that work in her favor? No. Think about this, people. Think about this.
And if you want to help him, then you should vote for Cornel West, or you should vote for Joe Manchin and his no labels ticket, or you can vote for, RFK Jr. if he decides to run third party. But if you don't want to help Trump become president, you got to vote for Joe Biden.
And that's the narrative that they're going to be using. That's the narrative that they're going to use. If you don't want to help Trump, you better vote for Joe Biden. Man, fuck all this. I'm not even sure I should be afraid of Donald Trump, like with all this nonsense. They actually make it seem like Trump is like this notorious figure that is just going to be the most evil thing. We already had Trump. We already had Joe Biden. I prefer neither. And you, as a voter, should have the opportunity to vote neither. And this is what happens when the Democratic Party and the Republican Party give you candidates that people don't fucking want. This is what happens when the Democratic Party sits up here and continues to make promises to people only to renege once they're in office. This is what happens, people. This is what happens when the current administration that you have in office right now, people are making less now than they were before. Financially, the number of people told me they were better off financially when Trump was in office versus now with Joe Biden. Come on, people, wake up. Wake up. So he can sit there really smug and tell you you're supporting Donald Trump if you do this, he's fine. Fine. He don't need any type of radical change in his life. He didn't even want, again, they smeared Bernie Sanders' campaign. What'd that tell you? And Bernie ran through the Democratic Party. So it's not even just about the third party issue.
That's it. Very simple. Now, I think messaging to voters who might actually make this decision is probably a little different, I would say, because
No, chastising works.
Yeah.
You see, it's funny. It's all fun and games to them. Chastising works. Mm-hmm.
Like, I do think you need to explain why these candidates would not be good candidates for president. I really do, because
If you need to explain to people why these candidates would not be good candidates, if you actually believe that I am going to sit here and believe that Joe Biden is a better president than Cornel West would be, or even RFK Jr. I disagree with him on the Israel-Palestine thing. We know we can't rock with that. And I disagree with him running the Democratic Party. But if you actually sit up here and think that I believe that Joe Biden would be a better president, this guy can barely talk, guys. Joe Biden's falling down on the stage, forgetting people's names, and they want you to believe that Joe Biden would be better? This is a psyop. How much is the DNC paying these guys? How much? You see what they got to do? They really got to try, because Joe Biden is so damn horrible. They got to get Pause Save America on board. They got to get the teenage boys on Twitter telling people Gen Z really knows what's up and Joe Biden is where it's at. Like all this whack shit. Nobody's falling for this shit. Wake up, people. A hot mess.
And I think we could get tripped up in that, because I think if you are one of these voters and you hear a bunch of people yelling at you to vote for Joe Biden and because you have to, I don't think it's going to be very effective. And I think you have to say why RFK Jr. is not a good choice, why Cornel West is not a good choice, why Joe Manchin or whoever it may be is not a good choice. So that is something that I think Democrats are going to have to figure out in the next.
Why is Joe Biden a good choice? He's not. I really do believe these people, like I said, they're a hot mess. Oz came in here and said these clowns are so personable yet so pathetic, spewing vomit for the very entities they are systemically killing us all. Darwin is blushing. There's Notori. Notori comes in and says Pause Save America is the arm of the DNC and a hack job and a CIA agent. Let's not forget that this lame, whack-ass mofos came out of the Barack Obama administration. Bingo. And it goes on. Because even MSNBC, they're also playing into this whole fringe candidate issue where they're going to be problematic for Joe Biden. Shout out to Case Study QB also for this clip as well. See, they're getting nervous. You know why they're afraid, right? You know why they're afraid? They're afraid because Joe Biden's polling so horribly, and they're afraid because the majority of Democrats are saying they don't want Joe Biden.
As the 2024 presidential primary race starts to heat up, some fringe candidates are already gaining momentum. In a new article for Vanity Fair, our guest Mark McKinnon writes that presidential hopefuls like Marianne Williamson, RFK Jr., and Cornel West might seem like pesky, small-time tormentors, but in reality, they're seasoned, self-assured, and camera-ready candidates.
Look at this. She's talking about Cornel West, Marianne. RFK said, while it appears they may be pesky, small-time tormentors. You see what the problem is, right? They weren't chosen by the establishment. The establishment didn't choose them. When you're not chosen, you're pesky. You're a tormentor. I would actually apply those words to Joe Biden right now. I would consider him to be pesky. I would consider him to be a tormentor. Maybe he should step down. Maybe he's the spoiler candidate and ruin it for everybody else.
And they were already stealing buzz from Trump and Biden. Bob Torselli and Mark McKinnon, the author, are still with us. Mark, how big of a threat are these fringe candidates to the current frontrunners? Because if you're perusing Twitter these days, there's a whole bunch of alpha macho men riding RFK like he is Secretariat these days, and they think he is the voice of the future.
So now they're going to use the fringe and the misogynist. They're going to apply the, watch, this is coming. Mark my words. So she said macho guys defending RFK Jr. What's going to come after that later on? They're going to try to say that RFK Jr.'s fans are misogynistic. Watch. Mark my words. Check back in with me next year. Watch. Because this is the kind of level, the angle that they took with Bernie Sanders. So just keep that in mind. And they're calling them fringe candidates. They can't just be candidates. They have to be called fringe. No democracy in this country.
Yeah, well, there's two ways to run in politics, scared and unopposed. So the better way to run is scared when you have these fringe candidates out there, because one thing we know is that the media abhors a vacuum, and they also hate a rerun, right? So they're going to look for any conflict, any place where there's a storyline. And as I mentioned in the piece, those three may be fringe candidates, but they're seasoned people, they're articulate, they have interesting, if maybe out there ideas that the media is going to gobble up. And there's some interesting things coming down the line that I think are specific to this election that are going to provide even more oxygen for those candidates. And I mean specifically the fact that Joe Biden has decided to skip Iowa and New Hampshire, go to South Carolina as the first primary. Well, that means that those three and perhaps others who may yet get in are going to suck up a lot of media attention and oxygen during those critical months when that's where all the media are going to be.
That's his dumbass fault. That's the DNC's fault. That's what they get for changing the primary schedule.
I think, first of all, it's an enormous mistake of Joe Biden to skip Iowa and New Hampshire. So I agree with Mark. It's going to create a platform and an opening which otherwise would not exist. It may be that none of these candidates at the moment have enormous followings and seem like credible threats, but Pat Buchanan, after all, did get George W. elected, and Bill Clinton, Woodrow Wilson, a host of other people became president because of third-party candidates. I would take it seriously in the White House. Joe Biden is going to win or lose the presidency by 2 or 3 percentage points.
Okay, so that's the first clip, and then the second one is here. Let me just get this one queued up for you as well. All right.
A fringe of a fringe can decide this election.
Mark, you write about the possibility of unity candidates in 2024, and
I just want to add in this part about the fringe thing. They use the word fringe as if it's a negative term. Some of us don't see fringe as negative. And I'm going to tell you, you keep using the word fringe, like if mainstream, especially if older adults will consider that to be a negative thing, younger people will eat that shit up. I remember this when I was in the 90s, like, oh God, no, don't listen to that gangster rap music. It's so bad. Really? Let me see what they're talking about. Younger people would love that shit. If you're going around saying, oh, fringe candidate, they're so far on the outside, they're not the norm, they're not usual. Great. Let me check them out and see what they're talking about. That could actually work against them by using that term. You think they would have learned after Trump ran in 2016, but they really have not learned anything.
even called Gretchen Whitmer and Mitt Romney the bipartisan dream ticket. A, dream for who? And B, how would that even happen?
Well, listen, absolutely improbable, but possible. There's a scenario here where an organization, No Labels, is creating a pathway for a third-party unity ticket that would occur if we got to next May, and if Trump were the nominee. And No Labels has made it very clear the whole point that they're doing this is to make sure that Trump's not the next president. But if you had a situation where Trump was the nominee and Biden were, for whatever reason, in bad shape, whether it's a health crisis or economic crisis or whatever it might be, and you know, listen, I'm a Joe Biden fan. I supported him. But I don't think he's going to be better at 80 a year from now than he is today. And that's why most of the country doesn't think anybody should be president at 80. But he's running, and he's got a good record to run on. But if he gets to that point next spring, and he's down double digits to Donald Trump, all bets at that point will be off, and no labels will have created ballot access in perhaps 50 states, but they've already established it in a lot, but let's say 40, 45, 50 states.
How is no labels? We need to ask this question. How are they creating ballot access in all these states that quickly? Because people who have worked third parties, Green Party, they'll tell you, Libertarian Party, they'll tell you that it takes time to get ballot access. How are they, this organization, how are they able to just get ballot access in all these states that quickly? People need to start asking that question. And two, if they actually think that someone like Gretchen Whitmer and Mitt Romney, like seriously, give me a break. If they really think that that is going to win, especially young people over, I don't see too many young people shilling for Mitt Romney, boo. I don't see too many young people shilling for Mitt Romney. They see him as out of touch. They feel like he is not up to date with the times. I don't see them really going for them. And remember, it was Gen Z who actually helped Democrats win in November in the midterms. So good luck with that.
And they'll put together a unity ticket. At that point, pick your brackets. I mean, you can pick your own favorite pairings. And at that point, if Biden's in that bad a shape, I think Democrats will be released to put up interesting candidates. So, you know, I like Whitmer. I like Whitmer Romney, but I like Cheney, Buttigieg. Take your pick.
Listen to the people they're mentioning. Cheney and Buttigieg. Didn't Liz Cheney vote against LGBTQ rights? Now, she may have come around on that issue later on, but look at how they just lump people together. Liz Cheney, Democratic Party all of a sudden loves Liz Cheney now because she stood up to Donald Trump. Give me a break. Give me a break. But you can't organize with people on the right. You can't get out into the street and march for Medicare for all, for health care, for anti-war rallies. You can't do that, but they can put someone on the right on a ticket with a Democrat, and you're supposed to just accept that. They put Liz Cheney with Pete Buttigieg. Buttigieg, black people don't like you. I'm sorry, didn't we learn this already in 2020? Pete Buttigieg, these people would struggle, particularly having lived down south. Pete gonna struggle in South Carolina just like he did last time. Liz, just get out of here with this. Anything. Basically, they want people to come in that will maintain the status quo. That's what this is really about. Now, I want to go back to 2016, and I want to remind you of something. Oftentimes, we hear people mention Jill Stein. It's Jill Stein, 2016. She did this, she did that, yada, yada. People often forget about Gary Johnson. You know, people act like there wasn't another third-party candidate that ran. Gary Johnson, if you guys remember, he ran on the Libertarian ticket, right? The Libertarian Party, they have pretty good ballot access. In fact, let me go ahead and pull this up here because there's one piece here that I want to show you in particular. Not foreign policy, polling. Listen to this. The Libertarian Party conducted presidential primaries in only a few states. All delegates to the Libertarian National Convention were unpledged, meaning that they could vote for the candidate of their choice. In pre-nomination preference polls conducted by state Libertarian parties, Johnson won first place in most states preceding the Libertarian National Convention at the end of May. So that's important to note. The general election. In late September 2016, Johnson's support was placed at 8.6% by Real Clear Politics, average of presidential polls, and at 7.9% by 538 polls only forecasting model. Johnson's highest polling nationally to date has been 13% against Clinton and Trump. But notice how most of these outlets never mention Gary Johnson. Why is that? Why do they only mention Jill Stein? Need to start asking that question. There is more. A Washington Post SurveyMonkey 50-state poll was conducted online between August 9th and September 1st, found that Gary Johnson was polling at 10% or higher in 42 states and at 15% or higher in 15 states. Johnson received 25% in his home state of New Mexico and Utah. See, I just want to remind people about this because I got tired of people just pretending like Jill Stein was the only third-party candidate. And there's more. So they go into the debates there. That's not the part I wanted to go to. I didn't want to go into that either. Sorry. Let me go back up. But I thought that piece was very interesting. This part right here. Johnson and Weld formed the first ticket of any party to feature two governors since 1948 presidential election. They received 3.3% of the vote, totaling nearly 4.5 million, dwarfing Johnson's 2012 popular vote total and making the Libertarians the most successful presidential run to date and the most successful third-party candidacy since Ross Perot in 1996. But nobody talks about this. Just bringing you back there. Now, let's fast forward. Let's go to 2020. I want to show you something because I think this is important for people to see. When we look at the votes, presidential election results 2020, look at this. So we got Biden, Trump, Joe Jorgensen, Howie Hawkins, and then we have like Alliance, PSL. We're just going to focus on Green, Libertarian, Republican, Democrat right now because they have the most, right? So again, when we look at 2020, we had Joe Jorgensen paired with Spike Cohen, and we had in the Green Party, Howie Hawkins paired with Angela Walker. Have you guys noticed something? Notice how you don't seem to hear them complain about these third-party candidates that ran in 2020. You know why? Because Joe Biden won. Because the Democratic Party won. If Trump would have won, then you would have heard them complaining about them. But I want to show you how well they did because people may not realize. Now look at this. If we're looking at Joe Jorgensen and Spike Cohen, right? Just in Arizona, remember Arizona was one of those states, right? They got over 50,000 votes. Third party, they got over 50,000 votes. California, they came away with over 180,000. Let's look at the total. Let's go all the way down because I want to show you something. Texas, they got over 100,000. You see this? Over 126,000 votes. Altogether, Joe Jorgensen and Spike Cohen got over 1 million votes. Almost 2 million. If we pivot to the column here, this is the Green Party column. So this is Howie Hawkins and this is Angela Walker. They didn't get even 500,000 votes. What that tells me is the Libertarian Party, I believe they do have more ballot access than the Green Party does. But what I'm trying to show you guys is that these people should not be counted out. And they're talking about swing states. So let's look at a state. Which one was the swing state? Pennsylvania. Let's look at Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, Joe Jorgensen and Spike Cohen got almost 80,000 votes, right? So this is one of the states that they say the third party would ruin it for. Did that ruin it for Biden? No, it didn't. You see what I'm saying? Look at this. And it was still really close between Biden and Trump. Let's go to another one. Let's go to Wisconsin. Wisconsin, Libertarian, they got over 38,000 votes. Did that stop Biden from winning Wisconsin? No, it didn't. Aaron said Libertarian Party had full ballot access, only one of the third parties. This explains a lot. Yeah. So, but the point I'm trying to make here, guys, is that when people make these comments, they're like, oh, well, these people should matter or those third parties should matter. No, they should matter. So look at that. And people should also not overlook the Libertarian Party. Look at how well they did. They outperformed Howie Hawkins and Angela Walker. But again, like I said, you don't hear them make those the comments they make about Jill Stein. You don't hear them make those comments about Howie Hawkins and Angela Walker because Joe Biden won. If Joe Biden would have lost, they would make those comments about Howie Hawkins and Angela Walker. The next time someone approaches you with that narrative, bring up the 2020 election with Howie Hawkins and Angela Walker. Bring that up. Just wanted to point that out. I'm going to go to some of these comments here. Thank you for the super chat. Philosophical. I think Trump ended up pardoning more Black people than Obama. Might be pulling that number out of my butt, though. I think he actually did. Thank you, Fancy Pants. Didn't Cube go on Bad Faith? I never saw Ice Cube on Bad Faith. I'm not sure. I'd have to check. Thank you, Philosophical. We're so back, bros. I hope RFK Jr. personally gives every Washington, D.C. nerd an atomic wedgie. Thank you, David. Funny how binary thinking isn't accepted these days in everything except politics. That's where you only have two choices. Thank you, Janice. 11% of Trump's vote came from registered Democrats, and there's that. Thank you, Jessica. They are all Obama's old staff. It says it on their website. See, there you guys go. I told you. I told you. Thank you. None of your business. Next time on Gas or Food Liner, think is Biden better? Thank you, Roger. Sounds like Steph Rule is getting fire for RFK herself. Thank you, Space. I can see why RFK Jr. sees Israel's side because a Palestinian took the life of his father over his father, even with he is not a hardcore supporter. But when he was asked about that from the rabbi, when he was asked about that, he said he didn't believe that person took his life. The Sion took his father's life. So I don't know. Like I said, I'm confused. Thank you, DC, who let the dogs out. Thank you, Marcus. Did you see that Warren has joined the race? The cringe is so real. Hashtag Cornell West 2024. I did not see that. I'm not sure if she did. I think they've been putting people's names in polls that haven't even decided to run. She's ridiculous. Forget her with all that. Thank you, Chelsea. As a woman living in a red state, Trump isn't that scary anymore. We already lost SCOTUS. Protecting the courts was the only reason I voted for the Democrats. Damage done. Why should I ever support the Dems again? Again, hashtag vote green. See? Thank you, DC. As a two-time Libertarian Party delegate and early member of the Libertarian Socialist Caucus of the LP, I can assure you that the LP national conventions and primaries are just as rigged as the red and blue ones. Interesting. Thank you, Philip. Trump is the lesser of two evils. I'm glad I get to vote for Cornell. That's an interesting statement. That's interesting. And thank you, Roger. That wasn't meant to say getting the hots for RFK herself. Oh, okay. Thank you. All right. Well, moving on to our final story here. Eric, if you can cue that up and let me know when that's ready, we can move on to that. Barack Obama is back in the news. Yes, believe it or not. There are two issues we need to discuss in reference to Obama. Recently, he had an interview on CNN. Part of that was about Joe Biden and the Ukraine war. We're going to talk about that piece of it tonight. And then also, Russell Brand actually revealed something about Barack Obama. And I know some of you are like, what is it this time? Or is it something that you don't already know? But it's in reference to taxes. And I think you guys need to see the hypocrisy in reference to how someone may have governed versus what they did when they got out of office. This is Russell Brand exposing Barack Obama. We're going to play a little bit of this, and then I'm going to go to the CNN interview.
And fun show. Barack Obama was seen as a great hope for many people, someone that could genuinely change the political conversation, that was a brilliant speaker and a charismatic man. Of course, the 2008 bank bailout smeared that reputation somewhat, as did the droning of Syrian children. But now that he's not president, now that he's an elder statesman advocating for Joe Biden, that guy, let me know in the comments what you think of him. It's disappointing, isn't it, to learn that a legal tax evading strategy that he railed against while president is being exploited now, probably because he's actually so poor and he's, oh no, he's a multi-millionaire, isn't he? Let's have a look at this.
As Americans, we don't mind paying our fair share of taxes as long as everybody else does too.
Do we? Yeah, we do.
But for far too long, lobbyists have rigged the tax code with loopholes that let some corporations pay nothing.
Hey guys, he won't be saying that in a couple of years when he's not president. And indeed, he's not saying that in a couple of years.
They've riddled it with giveaways that the super rich don't need, while denying a break to middle-class families who do.
Joe Biden there just thinking, soon it'll be my turn, and possibly earning a few quid on the side. Who's to say what happened when he was vice president? Let me know in the comments.
Let's close loopholes so we stop rewarding...
Oh, Joe Biden, no, not the loopholes, you idiot. Hunter!
...companies that keep profits abroad and reward those that invest here in America.
Everyone knows what to say, don't they? Everyone knows the things that you're supposed to say, but no one actually does them. Yes, let's all clap this. We're not really shutting those loopholes though, are we? Of course we're not. He's not going to be president in a couple of years. He'll be using those loopholes. Oh, phew.
Let's use those savings to rebuild our infrastructure and to make it more attractive for companies to bring jobs home.
Yeah, this is all such great stuff. It's not just bullshit though, is it?
Let's simplify the system and let a small business owner file based on her actual bank statement.
Oh, this is good. You're not going to in a few years just be exploiting those loopholes, not after you said her. Some of these weathered guys. Come on. I saw Reagan say that. I saw Nixon say that. I saw Jimmy Carter say that. Nobody actually does it.
We can use that money to help more families pay for childcare and send their kids to college. We need a tax code that truly helps working Americans trying to get a leg up in the new economy.
I mean, everything's saying that's all sort of fantastic, but it might as well be theatre. When you look at it, actually, it is theatre, isn't it? People standing up and clapping, the flag hanging up there, career politicians just sat around, everyone's saying the stuff that they know they're supposed to say, everyone knowing that they're not going to actually do anything about it. It's become more and more meta, because in that one, Barack Obama was actually defining the situation. I mean, you know, I'm sick and tired of, like, presidents saying this stuff, and then when they retire from office, going on to exploit those loopholes and give speeches where they earn millions of dollars. Because of the way the world is now, you someone could see it all happen in real time. I sometimes think that the reason we've got this mad old Joe Biden version of the president now is that no one can be bothered to even emotionally invest in, oh, there's a woman one, oh, there's one that's a different colour, oh, there's one like, it's like, just give us an old white one that's totally full of shit and just bring out another one in 4 years.
And we can achieve that together.
Did we clap yet, or already? We're still not shutting the loopholes though. No.
Helping hardworking families make ends meet.
That's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to do. Us, Raytheon, Wall Street, Lockheed Martin, quantitative easing bill, all of it. Just the old hard work. What do you want me to say again? Is it hard?
And I just want to add too, you have to keep in mind, Obama is saying what he's been told is okay to say. So of course he got the okay to make that statement. But once he was out of office, he was able to benefit from those same loopholes that he pretended to champion against in that speech right there. It's all theater. None of these people are real. I don't think they even believe half the things that they say. I think Joe Obama. I almost said Joe Obama. I think Obama was a perfect puppet. Someone that you could just pick up and continue to pull the strings, at least for that time being that he was in office. And he was the type of person that was going to follow through. And that's really what they want in DC. They want someone who's status quo, someone that they can pull their strings when need be and will just go along to get along. They don't want someone who's going to, clap back. They don't want someone who's going to talk about being anti-war. They don't want someone that's going to talk about, okay, we need to try to give everybody healthcare. They don't want that. They want someone who's going to be a good little puppet and is going to do what they are told.
Working for, why don't you just sing a song?
Giving them the tools they need for good paying jobs in this new economy. Maintaining the conditions of growth.
Oh, shut up. I can't listen to any more of this. Okay, this is from Lee Fang's Substack. Barack Obama campaigned extensively during his presidency to eliminate the carried interest loophole, a tax strategy that allows billionaire investors to evade ordinary income taxes. There he was, just giving a brilliant speech about it. American families, hard-working, common decency. You heard it all before. Hedge funds and other private fund managers use this tax treatment to pay long-term capital gains of 20%, a rate that is almost half of what many working Americans pay.
But why is this allowed in the first place? The reason why this is allowed is because those same people who benefit from those loopholes are the people who are basically pulling the puppet strings. The billionaire class. These billionaires that they own so much. I told you before multiple times about BlackRock and about Larry Fink. How they don't really want to be known. They kind of like to hide in the shadows, but more has come out about them recently. But the people who, the banks, like when we talk about the central banking system, when we talk about like the billionaires, like I'm not talking about millionaires. We're talking about the trillionaires, the people who benefit from that system. If you're the one that controls the money and the way the money moves, then of course you're going to have some type of a policy or some type of a loophole that is going to be beneficial to you moving your money. That's how it works.
Obama, while in office, said this loophole leads to folks who are doing very well paying lower rates than their secretaries. However, since leaving the presidency, Obama has employed a similar tax strategy to potentially only pay capital gains tax for the services he's provided to private business interests. One example of this is Obama's strategic partnership with NBA Africa, which was announced in 2021 as part of an expansion of Africa's largest men's basketball league. The deal is structured as a profit interest share. Now, what this is ordinary business practice. What this exposes is that the rhetoric while in office is absolutely empty and hollow. It's not particularly egregious that Barack Obama is doing this. It's standard, it's normal, everybody does it. What's egregious is that in office they say that and out of office they do this, because everything that takes place in office is a kind of spectacle. It's theater. It's just something that people are saying. If you were able,
it's an episode. It's just a show. It's an episode of a reality show where there's still a script. You just don't think there is because you've been told it's a reality show. It's not really real. It's what they choose to show you. So yeah, it's not that Barack Obama was doing something that was illegal. It's the fact that he's doing something that he actually spoke against while he was in office. That's the exposure there. That's why he's being exposed, because like, how could you stand up and make that speech and then you're doing the same thing that the billionaire class was doing while you were in office, which you complained about and said, we need to stop. And of course you saw the picture. You saw the video there of Elizabeth Warren standing up and applauding it. Of course she would, right? All these people are fake. Even the ones who had any real gusto and real, fight in them, once they got in bed with that DC system, all that went away. That's why they only would let someone like Bernie Sanders even get so far, because they knew.
We've said to young Barack Obama, look, are you sure about this? Because when you leave, you're going to be like a businessman. And you're going to actually need this stuff. You're like, well, I don't think I need to worry because this stuff will never actually happen. So what you are left with is the incontrovertible conclusion that politics is a media spectacle. It's not actually going to do anything. And that is the main message we're trying to transmit to you. That is not the way to improve your life. Participate in it by voting on it, talk about it, preferring one of them over another one, hoping that this one will do better than that one. Look, you see behind that one talking then is the one that you've got now. He'll be doing his version of this. He's so bloody old, he's not really gonna have time to cash in, is he, afterwards? But maybe his kids will. Now, we have to fund ourselves not using profitable tax loopholes because we just can't afford the accountants. So we have decided to accept this commercial from these partners.
All right, we're going to stop it there. And then I'm going to go to the next video, which is the interview. All those people just sitting there and clapping, like all these people are paid. Like even when they retire, like these people get speaking fees. like for the rest of their life. They continue to get paid. They get a pension. They have health care that a lot of you will never get the opportunity to have. These are the people you really need to be, when people say like you need to be nice to politicians, I say bullshit. Why are you being nice to someone who hasn't done anything for you? Be like Janet Jackson and say, what have you done for me lately? Think about that. Now, so that's one piece. The other piece is Barack Obama's interview here on CNN. I do want to tap into this a little bit because he does get into Joe Biden's presidency, and he also gets into the war in Ukraine. And I think we need to see this piece. I think there are different clips of this on YouTube, but I think Obama is lying his ass off in this interview. And I will also say, notice how tired he looks. Notice how worn down he looks. Like, look at his face. I don't know if they just put extra makeup on him or what, but he looks like he's been through it. Let's go on.
Running for re-election. Yes. Everybody's talking about his age. People are talking about his polls. Even there's some challenges within the Democrats. Maybe somebody might start to try to primary him, etc. But what I would like to know is, many say that his policies and his legislatives and his wins, frankly, should speak for themselves. And yet, according to The Way to Win, it's a Democrat-leaning firm, only some 22% of Latino voters, 33% of Black voters can actually identify something that they say he's done to specifically make their lives better. Right. What would you say to that? And how would you advise him to connect in a re-election?
Let's just pause here for a second because I want to show you what she just did, right? Notice how she lumped Black voters and Latino voters together. Notice how she did that, right? That's on purpose because now you're addressing the immigration issue, which is one of the issues that has been a big concern under President, Trump, and also under President Biden right now. With the immigration issue is still a problem. They haven't figured out. I won't say they haven't figured out. They have not resolved it. Period. So that's to include the immigration issue, and then also, of course, to mention Black Americans. Barack Obama is half Black. Of course, you're going to mention that as well. And also there have been, and I'll have to look for the numbers to pull up, show you next time. There have been a number of Black men that have been leaving the Democratic Party and joining the Republican Party. And I think we're going to continue to see that trend happen because, again, material needs are not being met by the Democratic Party. But she did the same thing I was telling you about earlier, the people of color thing, right? Okay, listen to this.
How would you advise him to connect in a re-election?
I think Joe Biden has done an extraordinary job leading the country through some very difficult times. I do not think that there's going to be any kind of serious primary challenge to Joe Biden.
Let's just pause right there. He thinks that Joe Biden has done an extraordinary job, but he's not going to give you examples. They're all doing this. They're all doing, at least Ro Khanna will even try to say, oh, well, don't forget about that American Rescue Plan. And he at least tries to mention something. People like Obama are just like, oh, I think he's done an extraordinary job. Doing what? Doing what? Extraordinary job? Okay. Here he goes, just to lie his ass off.
Not think that there's going to be any kind of serious primary challenge to Joe Biden. I think the Democratic Party is unified.
Pause. No significant primary challenge to Joe Biden. RFK Jr. is polling at like 20%. Marianne Williamson, last I checked, was polling like what, 7 or 8%, somewhere in between there. So together, they are almost at 30%. You don't think that's significant? Obama doesn't think that's significant to an incumbent president? That's significant. Donald Trump had primary challengers. They weren't polling at 20%. So here we go. This is him running cover again for the Democrat establishment.
There was a lot of talk. You'll remember when he was first elected, because Bernie Sanders had run, that somehow there was this huge split between progressive Democrats and more centrist Democrats. And the truth is that partly because of how Joe is governed, those divisions have been bridged.
That's a damn lie. Let's talk about this for a second. Because the Bernie Sanders run, he was like, oh, there's been some type of division between the progressive set and the centrists. But because of Joe Biden, that division has been bridged. Who is he talking about? Is he talking about the politicians in DC, or is he talking about the American people? Let's be clear about this. If he's talking about the politicians in DC, he's basically telling you that Bernie Sanders and the rest of the squad, no, there's no progressivism there anymore. They've moved over to the centrist side, which is what we've been trying to warn you guys about. Now you're hearing that from Obama. But if he's not talking about the politicians in DC and he's talking about the American people, he's 100% wrong. I didn't move over to that side. I know a lot of you did not move over to that side. Like, oh, well, this is just the way it is. Let's just accept it and support Joe Biden. I know plenty of people that came from that Bernie movement that are not okay with the way things are going. So who is he talking about? And if he's talking about the politicians, why isn't he talking about the American people? Has Obama talked to working class people? Has he come into these neighborhoods and talked to the people who are working 2 jobs and asked them how they feel? Ask them how they feel about not having health care? No. Obama is talking to people like him, just as he usually would. He came to Dorchester one time and people I remember it was a big deal that people were like, nah, F him. The only reason he want to show up now was because he's trying to get reelected. Dorchester's a neighborhood in Boston. I should mention that for those who don't know. But the thing is, who's he talking to? See what I mean? He's talking to the college grad, PMC class like himself. He's not talking to the guy that works at Starbucks. He's not talking to the person pumping gas. He's not talking to the pizza delivery guy. You see what I mean? So this shows you what I told you a long time ago. People take their cue from Bernie Sanders and the squad. So if Bernie Sanders and the squad move to the right, then those people, a lot of their followers will say, okay, I guess we're supposed to move kind of to that way as well. But what has happened is it has not gone the way that they thought that it would go. When Bernie Sanders told everybody to vote for Hillary Clinton when he lost in 2016, he was booed, but some people were like, okay, we're going to do it. Then when Bernie Sanders did it again in 2020, he was booed again. Some people were like, okay, we're going to go ahead and do it. But since then, the way that they have voted on legislation and Bernie Sanders coming out of the gate early saying he's going to support Joe Biden before there were even any primary challengers, and then Marianne Williamson announcing, and RFK Jr. and Cornel West, and all 3 of them are running on some type of progressive policy. And for Bernie Sanders to support the person that doesn't support Medicare for all, and including the squad, Jamal Bowman says we got to drag him over the finish line. They've exposed themselves. I realized it after Force the Vote. But they have exposed themselves and people really don't want to rock with them like they used to. You still got some stands out there, but they've exposed themselves. So pay attention to what Obama is saying.
I think what's true in American politics generally is until you get to campaigns, people aren't paying much attention. Mm-hmm. People have gone through a difficult time because of COVID and the pandemic and lockdowns, because of inflation, primarily the result of both the war in Ukraine and rising energy prices as well as supply chain issues. And so,
but Joe Biden is doing an extraordinary job. Isn't that what he said at the beginning? Now, he just brought up inflation, supply issues, the war, but he's doing a good job.
So people have memories about eggs got more expensive and gas was more expensive. And they haven't been paying as much attention to the fact that, for example, the African American unemployment rate is lower than it's been in decades.
So what? Let's talk about these jobs. Just because you create jobs don't mean these jobs are paying a living wage. Just because the unemployment rate for African Americans may be lower, according to Barack Obama, doesn't mean those African Americans are making good money at those jobs. You see the problem? Doesn't mean these are full-time jobs. They never tell you what these jobs are. Full-time jobs? Are they part-time jobs? Are they contract positions? Are these temp positions? A lot of the people I know that have been getting new jobs here in the Boston area, those have been contract positions. Those haven't been full-time jobs, and they don't include full-time benefits. So what are the jobs? Just because people working don't mean that they're surviving. Just because people working doesn't mean they're not still struggling. This is where he misses the plot. But he knows this. Obama, Harvard educated, he's very intelligent. He's not stupid. He's a pawn.
The campaign will allow President Biden to make those arguments. And I think that, in a media environment that's so cluttered, it's very hard to break through until you get to election time. You'll recall when I ran for re-election.
Now he's going to blame. Listen to this. Let me tell you what he's really saying here. This part's kind of funny.
In a media environment that's so cluttered.
In a media environment that's so cluttered, you know what that's a signal to, right? He's signaling all the other people out there that do like independent media, like me. He's talking about us. He's done this before, this little dog whistle that he does towards kind of like saying bad things about independent media without saying them explicitly. He's done this before where he feels like we're part of the problem. We shouldn't be here and we're crowding the space. Because think about it. If you remove us, if you take away independent media, the media space isn't as crowded anymore.
It's very hard to break through until you get to election time. You'll recall when I ran for re-election in 2012, my poll numbers weren't that great, and we ended up winning comfortably.
When you were running for re-election in 2012, your polling did not say that 70% of voters did not want you to run for president. Okay.
Part of that was just we started campaigning and we were able to get a message out, and people said, yeah, that policy or this thing left undone, that irritated me a little bit. But overall, I think he's done a good job. And I think that's what they're going to conclude about Joe Biden as well.
I don't think so. Out of touch, totally ill-informed. And he also, I don't think it's a fair comparison to compare his reelection to Joe Biden's reelection. Obama ran against Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney was not the best candidate. Like, I'm just keeping it real. So you ran against someone that you already knew was not a strong candidate. So you had that going for you. Also, of course, you're incumbent. You're going to have that going for you. But that's the big reality. You did not have a strong challenger. Joe Biden has a strong challenger. Donald Trump is ahead of Joe Biden in the polls. And I know it's still early, but still. Because see, before, Biden could critique Trump's record. Now Trump is critiquing Biden's record as president. And a lot of people are angry in this country economically and frustrated. So I don't think it's fair to make the comparison. By 2012, this was after the 2008 housing crisis, things were starting to pick up again. Obama doesn't mention that as well. We're still dealing with inflation. Think about that, guys.
When Russia started its illegal invasion, the second invasion of Ukraine, I believe you said that democracies, it's a clarion call, it's a wake-up call. Democracies are getting flabby and feckless. Where does Ukraine, in your view, stand in the fight to preserve democracy?
I think it's vital. It's interesting. Before I left office, I gave speeches not just here in Athens, but also in Hamburg and in London. And and one of the arguments I made is do not take for granted the extraordinary achievement of the European Union and the fact that a continent that was racked by war and bloodshed for centuries was now as prosperous and as peaceful as any in history. And then now we've seen the first war on European soil in recent memory, and I think it was a wake-up call to Europe. And I think it was a wake-up call to the West and to democracies around the world that the old ways of thinking, might makes right, big countries can do what they want to small countries, that people cannot independently determine their futures.
But how can Obama criticize big countries doing something to small countries when the United States government has been doing that for decades? Over a century, actually. You mean like the way you approve drone strikes in Libya, Obama? Wasn't that a big country doing something to a small country? Iraq? Somalia? This doesn't make any sense, what he's saying right here.
That those forces have to be confronted. Watching the Ukrainians themselves with such courage and bravery fight back, I think that reminded Europe of who they were. And I've been impressed by the degree to which, in not easy circumstances, Europe has stood up. It has provided the aid that was necessary. I think the Biden administration has very deftly managed maintaining that alliance to support Ukraine. And I believe the stakes are high to send a message to somebody like Putin that they are not going to just be able to willy-nilly determine the borders of other countries.
But it's okay for the U.S. government to do that? See, that's the thing. Like, this is hilarious to me. Some of the same things that he's criticizing Russia for doing, the U.S. government has been doing this. So the problem isn't necessarily that Russia's doing. The problem is that someone besides the United States is doing it, which means the U.S. cannot be the world's police. That's really what that's about. There's so much hypocrisy here.
So obviously hindsight is a great thing, 2020 vision is a great thing, but you experienced while you were in office Putin's first invasion, the annexation of Crimea. And many people said neither you nor the Western allies stood up and put enough red lines around him around that. So what's your reaction to that? And I want to just add also your friend, your good friend and colleague, Angela Merkel, is under very serious criticism right now. I know you've just met with her recently. Should she have leveraged, Germany's economy, its energy on the addiction to cheap energy in Russia? Was that a mistake?
Well, I think the Ukraine of that time is not the Ukraine that we're talking about today. There's a reason why there was not an armed invasion of Crimea, because Crimea was full of a lot of Russian speakers, and there was some sympathy to the view that Russia was representing its interests.
What about the Russian speakers and the people who are ethnically Russian in the Donbass?
Rada at the time, the Ukrainian parliament itself, still had a number of Russian sympathizers, and the politics inside Ukraine were more complicated. And part of what happened was both myself, but also Merkel, who I give enormous credit for, had to pull in a lot of other Europeans kicking and screaming to impose the sanctions that we did and to prevent Putin from continuing through the Donbass into the rest of Ukraine.
Did you hear what he just said there? Listen to the part about the sanctions. Listen to this.
Ukraine were more complicated. And part of what happened was both myself, but also Merkel, who I give enormous credit for, had to pull in a lot of other Europeans kicking and screaming to impose the sanctions that we did and to...
They had to pull in Europeans kicking and screaming. I hope everyone's paying attention to this, to impose the sanctions that they did. These sanctions kill people. Like think about it.
To prevent Putin from continuing through the Donbass into the rest of Ukraine. So I actually think that given both where Ukraine was at the time and where the European mindset was at the time, we held the line. And part of what happened was, over time, a sense of Ukrainian identity separate from Russia and a determination to push back against Russia and an ability to prepare both militarily and civically to resist Russian pressure. They built up those muscles, and that's part of the reason why they were able to respond the way they did when you actually saw.
You're just going to leave out the fact that even congressmen like Ro Khanna, that letter that came from the White House, you're just going to leave out the fact that in 2018, there were already politicians in DC who wrote a letter talking about the concern that they had because of the rise of Nazification in Ukraine and Poland. You're just going to leave that out? That was 2018. It's 2023. Let's put the pieces of the puzzle together, guys. Joe Biden couldn't be in office for 3 years without participating and encouraging another conflict. You're just going to leave out the fact that Russia did try to negotiate in the beginning? You see the lies? Do you see how they're just playing? Obviously, the woman interviewing him, either she doesn't know these things that I just told you, or she does knows and she's been informed not to discuss it. But I have a feeling she doesn't even know what I just told you. So we're just going to leave that out? You're just going to leave out the fact that Russia was not provoked? Is that what we're doing here? When I tell you that Barack Obama is a puppet, he is a puppet. Let me let him finish here, and I'll tell you about the rest of this, because this is a mess.
To resist Russian pressure, they built up those muscles, and that's part of the reason why they were able to respond the way they did when you actually saw what was, in my view at least, incredibly misguided, not to mention illegal and incredibly cruel incursion by Russian forces.
Do you think Putin should have been challenged more then?
I think that we challenged Putin with the tools that we had at the time, given where Ukraine was at the time.
In other words, they didn't have more military funding at that point in time. In other words, what he's trying to tell you, given the tools that they had at that time, that also refers to resources and weapons, and the defense budget was not as high as it is now. Everybody following the dots? These things that we need to pay attention to. Something he said at the very beginning, we're going to go back to, and I'm going to tell you that this is a warning sign. So I called it. This part right here that he mentions about Biden, this piece.
Even there's some challenges within the Democrats. Maybe somebody might start to try to primary him, etc. But what I would like to know is, many say that his policies and his legislatives and his wins, frankly, should speak for themselves. And yet, according to The Way to Win, it's a Democrat-leaning firm, only some 22% of Latino voters, 33% of Black voters can actually identify something that they say he's done to specifically make their lives better. Right. What would you say to that? And how would you advise him to connect in a re-election?
Listen to this piece.
I think Joe Biden has done an extraordinary job leading the country through some very difficult times. I do not think that there's going to be any kind of serious primary challenge to Joe Biden. I think the Democratic Party is unified.
When he says there's not going to be any serious primary challenge, the Democratic Party is unified, what that really means is that, mark my words, in some way, shape, or form, if need be, he will intervene. Mark my words, just like last time. In some way, shape, or form, if he needs to do it, he will intervene. If he has to make a couple calls again to tell people, hey, Bobby Kennedy, drop out, he'll do it. Everybody remember this video, remember this live stream, because he's already letting you know, oh no, I think they're pretty unified, which means everybody got on board, got the message and got the signal to get on board for Joe Biden. Just like he got everybody on message to get on board for Joe Biden when he ran in 2020. And that included Bernie Sanders to drop out as well. And that included Bernie Sanders and all the rest of them. So there you go. So don't be surprised if the rest of them, we don't know who else is going to announce. Don't be surprised if they drop out. Just remember who was behind in the scenes. Terry Hinton says selection, not election. Exactly. Exactly. Thank you, Marcos. Warren tweeted it out. You owe me $1.99. LOL. I think she's running for Senate, right? Kathy said Warren's running for Senate re-election, not president. Okay, sorry. Oh, that's fair. I didn't say that. I didn't specify. Thank you, DC. For the record, libertarianism began as a left-wing anarchist philosophy in 19th century France. Read Joseph Desjacques, Pierre Joseph Proudhon. Thank you, Janice. Unemployment rate only count those eligible for unemployment. That's right. Right. This does not include people who may be an adult, but say you live with your parents, or you live with you live with someone else, but you're an adult and you don't have a job. That doesn't count. You're not counted. Thank you, Darren. Biden has done as much as Obama, nothing. Thank you for this as well. For a smart guy, Barack Obama's grammar is mediocre at best. He talks with a certain rhythm. I also think that's on purpose too, by the way, to get people to stay attentive. And thank you for this as well. I'm on poor nose. She's also an elitist puppet. So there you go. I'll take that comment on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. I know Cuomo not trying to do guilty by association. Sabby, I don't even have enough money to talk about what his brother did to New York State. Notice Ice Cube didn't just say not this people of color, minority, diversity-ish, and not just black, but specifically he said blacks who are descendants of slaves. Even among black people, we are at the bottom. That's true. And thank you for this as well. Sab, it didn't hit me till recently. Those push-ups were a jab at Joe calling that guy fat, challenging him to a push-up contest. Oh, I remember that. Tell the Pod Save Americas I'm okay with Trump or insert Republican candidate here because President, you fearing the country would burn well, then call us Nero. Let it all burn. We will build new upon the ashes of the old, like they did in Argentina in 2004. And thank you for this as well. Peep this wonderful documentary Marco sent me of how the workers ripped ownership away from the corporatists taking over the factories, then the country in Argentina, and built the economy back up to where the corporatists who ran the country, their business and their economy into the ground came back to reclaim it. It is called The Take. Please put in the chat to watch. Thank you so much for that. So Eric, if you can do that. And thank you for the tip, Crone of Heresy. Does Ice Cube have a management company? I don't know. I did Google. All right, guys, one more thing I do want to shout out. We did officially launch the RBN Boston chapter. So we've already met together as a group. I did send out a notification about it via my newsletter. If you can help us, please donate to the GoFundMe. We'll put that link in the chat as well, Eric. But our first event is going to be the RBN Boston chapter mutual aid barbecue event. The barbecue will take place on July 29th, 2023 this year. So this is for the Boston chapter, and you can see Rome has Detroit, CJ has Long Beach, Nick has Kansas City, and JB has Orlando. And I'll go ahead and show you where we are now. so far, this is really good. So far, we've raised $683. The goal is 2,000. I may not even need to get that high, to be honest. But if you can help, guys, that will be great. I do have to pay for the venue. And I'm not doing this outside because it's been raining off and on like every day here for the past couple weeks. I don't know what's going on, but I can't chance the weather right now. So that's why I'm going to do it inside of First Church in Jamaica Plain in Boston. So we're going to have it there that we don't have to worry about the weather issue. But it's going to be catered. So we're going to get barbecue. Already got that in back of my head. There will be another flyer created specifically just for that event. So Robin's going to help me with that. So I'm really excited about it. But yeah, help us out if you can, guys. I've been tweeting out thank yous to people on Twitter. When people donate, I say thank you so-and-so for the such and such dollars. If you're anonymous, I say thank you anonymous for the such and such dollars. But thank you guys so much. And I really do appreciate it. I think we'll be able to make the goal. Like I did start early just in case, because I know people, there's so many things going on with people right now, and people have other fundraisers that they need to raise money for as well. And I'll just shout you guys out. So thank you, Robert Sperry, Jean Zyback, Heather DeLuce, Mary L. Sanders, Andre Morton, Timothy Newber, Robin Zekin, James Henlon, Denise D, Charlie Mack, Anonymous, Betsy Gardstein, Marcia Sanchez, another anonymous, Chris Jameson, and another anonymous. Thank you guys so much for your help. I think this event is going to be pretty cool. And like, what we'll do is like, I'll stream it again, like I usually do. We'll probably record it and then upload it probably, because it depends on the Wi-Fi connection. And I don't know. I think we recorded there last time. So we'll probably record it and all that good stuff. This is one of the things that we do over at RBN is we help out people in the community. So we're really big on mutual aid and all of that jazz. So the goal is to help you guys get chapters started in your city as well. And if you're in one of these cities with Nick, Rome, CJ, or JB, and you'd like to help, reach out. I already have like a team of people here in Boston. Like people reached out like pretty much immediately, to be honest. So we're pretty good to go. But yeah, thank you guys so much. Okie doke. And that is about it, ladies and gentlemen. Tomorrow is Wednesday. I'm off, but I will be on the Hill Rising tomorrow. I think I'm taping at 11:30, so you'll probably see it somewhere afternoon-ish, that segment. So look forward to that. I'll be there, and you'll have clips here tomorrow. And other than that, I will see you on Thursday. Dr. Sandy Darity will be here. I'm super excited to finally sit down and chat with him. I think you're going to learn a lot Thursday night. And other than that, I'm peacing out, guys. And I am way over time, almost a 3-hour stream. All right, guys, you know how we do this. Oh, no, I forgot to show you the thing. One second. I forgot to show you the thingy. Yeah, I forgot to show you guys this. I put it on Twitter, but like I said, some of you are not on Twitter. But this guy made this for me. So a friend of the show actually made a design for me for Keep Up the Fight. Can't believe I almost forgot to show you this, guys. So this is it. It says Keep Up the Fight. Isn't it cute? Because I say that at the end of every stream. And then there's like, that's supposed to be me with the little hands. And I thought it was really cute. And I think did I do different colors? Yeah, I did do different colors, like white and all that kind of stuff. I did a pullover hoodie. I said pulley. I did a pullover hoodie. What else did I do? I did the crew neck shirt. I already got one for myself. I did the classic long sleeve tee. I like these. These is cute. This is the only one I've actually bought of my own merch. I also did the baseball one. I used to wear these shirts when I was growing up, the baseball shirts. They're really cozy and comfy. I did that. And all of these are all unisex, or they should be. I thought I selected unisex. And then just the other regular tee. Yeah. Yeah, man. So, yeah, I added that to my merch site now. So you'll see Keep Up the Fight. And then there's just the regular Sabby Sabs logo attire is there. And then there's the Sabby Sabs logo hats. Yeah, and I think those come in different colors. Yeah, I did different colors. And then there's the anime tee. And I don't want to bore you guys with this, but people are always asking me if I have merch, and I forget to mention it. But there's the anime. This is the one you guys see at the end of the show. Someone made that for me too. By the way, I'm not an artist at all. So I just want to put that out there. Don't look to me for any type of art. Okay. And there's the little logo mug there. There's another logo mug. I have this one. I have that anime mug. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, Keep Up the Fight is there. My sister's also working on some stuff too. She's gonna do a design for a couple of things I usually say on the show, like Make It Make Sense. And there's a couple of other ones too. I forget. Like I had it written down somewhere. I'm all over the place. But yeah, what's that, Steven? You need to put the YouTube name Sabby Sabs logo on the back on the next batch. Oh, that's a good idea. It's a good idea. Yeah, guys, I don't know about this stuff. I'm sorry, I don't know about any of this stuff. Anyway, time to go. All right, guys. You know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.